Chapter 319, Their Brother and Sister? Chapter 319, Their Brother and Sister? At that thought, Lady Wang rushed to the bed, grabbed a corner of the duvet, and yanked it off the bed. Feng Yiran's head went blank. He didn't expect Lady Wang to move so abruptly. What happened next was quicker than words could describe. With all her strength, Lady Wang pulled the duvet off the bed with a smirk. "Gotcha. You're not going anywhere." The moment Lady Wang removed the duvet from the bed, Feng Lu looked over her shoulder and met Lady Wang's gaze. Both women screamed when their eyes met. Ah! Only then did Feng Yiran realize what had happened. He rushed over and shoved his mother to the side. Lady Wang's back smashed into the closet and the pain brought tears to her eyes. However, she couldn't feel it. She could hardly breathe, for the physical pain was nothing compared to the pain inside. That was Feng Lu. Feng Lu was naked in Feng Yiran's bed. They were brother and sister. Feng Yiran regretted it as soon as he pushed Lady Wang away. He hurried over, trying to help her to her feet. However, his mother only glared at him. The ferocity in her eyes reminded him of a she-wolf. It was Feng Wu's doing. Feng Yiran ground his teeth, turning his cold gaze on Feng Wu. Lady Wang turned to look at Feng Wu as well. Because of all the noise they made, all those that had left came back. Feng Yanfeng was the first to enter the room. He frowned at Lady Wang. "What's going on?" Lady Wang cried in silence. In her shaken state, she looked rather appealing, and Feng Yanfeng softened right away. At an angle her husband couldn't see, Lady Wang stared at Feng Wu with a murderous look in her eyes. By now, she had figured out everything. Feng Wu had found out about the spring breeze powder which Lady Wang had gotten Granny Gui to bury in Fallen Star Yard. Instead of making a scene out of it, Feng Wu had kept her silence and used the drug on Feng Lu instead. Her poor girl. Lady Wang shed more tears. Lady Wang had dropped the duvet and Feng Lu hid back under it. Fearing that the others might try to move the duvet, Lady Wang sat down on the bed, shielding the duvet from sight. It's nothing. I tripped and bumped into the closet. And it hurts." Lady Wang wept weakly. She couldn't risk telling Feng Yanfeng, for she knew very well that once Feng Yanfeng saw Feng Lu in this state, he would explode. When that happened, both Feng Yiran and Feng Lu would be finished. "There really isn't any thief. It was my fault. Can we go back now?" Lady Wang wrapped her soft arms around Feng Yanfeng's neck and sobbed quietly. Lady Wang could be quite flirtatious when she tried, and Feng Yanfeng was mesmerized right away. He nodded. "Sure, let me carry you." The others scattered after Lady Wang and Feng Yanfeng left. Feng Wu was going to leave with Qiuling when she heard Feng Yiran's cold, malicious voice behind her. "Feng Wu, you must be so proud of yourself." Qiuling felt the skin on the back of her neck tingle, as if a venomous snake was staring at her. A cold sensation ran down her spine and she was terrified. She couldn't help but look at her mistress. Was it going to get ugly now? Feng Wu paused, turned around and smiled at Feng Yiran. "Feng Yiran, I have no idea what you're talking about." By now, all the others had left and Feng Lu jumped out of bed. She glared at Feng Wu with eyes that could spit fire before charging at her like a furious little lion. "Feng Wu, I'm gonna..." Chapter 320 Feng Wu. "I'm going to kill you." Chapter 320. Feng Wu. "I'm going to kill you." Feng Wu. "I'm going to kill you." Feng Lu drew out a sword that was hanging on the wall and stabbed at Feng Wu. The blade glinted. Feng Wu tilted her head and easily dodged the strike. Grabbing Feng Lu's hand which held the sword with her own right hand, Feng Wu smiled teasingly. "Are you sure you don't need to put some clothes on before killing me?" Those words were like a hard slap to Feng Lu's face. Her head spun and she was too furious to see things clearly. Feng Wu barely used any strength and Feng Lu fell back on the bed at her push. Feng Yiran kept his murderous gaze on Feng Wu. But Feng Wu wasn't threatened. She only darted a casual look at them. Incest, how exotic. You had fun, then you try to blame it on me. Aren't you afraid that I'll tell everyone what you did? Feng Lu gripped the sheets so tightly that her knuckles went white. Feng Yiran thought the same thing. He was considering the possibility of killing Feng Wu. Feng Wu smiled at the look on Feng Yiran's face. You're thinking about it, aren't you? Want to have a go? She then recalled when Feng Yiran and Feng Lu had left her family to the wolves. Well, Feng Yiran was anything but innocent. The more emboldened and cool-headed Feng Wu appeared, the more hesitant Feng Yiran became. He recalled on their way back to the imperial capital when he had tried to deal with Feng Wu but had been poisoned. Although this unruly girl didn't know any martial arts, she had more than enough tricks to make up for it. If he couldn't take her down once and for all, things would get nasty, putting him in a very difficult position. Hence, he had to placate Feng Wu for now. Let's talk. Feng Yiran put away his murderous intention for the time being. Feng Wu smirked. You're in no position to negotiate with me. Get your mother. Feng Wu had everything planned down to the very last detail. Despite the unexpected episode with Yu Minji, she had still managed to get the result she wanted. After that, Feng Wu left with Qiuling. Tears welled up in Feng Lu's eyes. She had never felt so aggrieved before. She glared at Feng Yiran. Why didn't you kill her? Why? Get out. Feng Yiran lost his temper at Feng Lu for the first time. Flying snow building. After Feng Yanfeng carried her back to her room, Lady Wang made up an excuse of not feeling well and went to lie down. Feng Yanfeng had business at court, so he left shortly afterward. Lady Wang bolted up as soon as Feng Yanfeng left. Her pale face turned livid as blue veins popped out on her forehead. Lady Wang felt like stabbing someone as soon as she remembered what she had seen on Feng Yiran's bed a moment ago. Granny Gui used to be Lady Wang's wet nurse and was the lady's most trusted servant. She was with Lady Wang all the time. Therefore, she had seen everything the lady saw. My lady. Tears welled up in Granny Gui's eyes and she was full of remorse. She slapped herself repeatedly as she cried. My lady, it's all my fault. If it wasn't for me, Miss Lu and the young master wouldn't have. Lady Wang always sided with those she trusted. Even now, she wouldn't blame Granny Gui for anything. Glaring in the direction of Fallen Star Yard, she said, It's all Feng Wu's doing. She's pure evil. I'm going to kill her. But my lady, getting revenge requires patience. The most important thing now is to make sure that Feng Wu won't tell anyone. Fury had caused Lady Wang to lose her head, but not Granny Gui. She tried to talk sense into her lady. Let's bribe her first so that she won't talk. We can always deal with her later. Otherwise, if word gets out. Chapter 321 A Deal. Chapter 321 A Deal. Lady Wang still wouldn't accept the reality. Maybe nothing happened between them. Maybe Xiao Lu is fine, right? Granny Gui sighed. Rising to her feet in a hurry, Lady Wang almost knocked a chair over. I'm going to ask Xiao Lu now. Maybe she's all right. Flower Butterfly Yard, Perching Phoenix Pavilion. A tall Chinese parasol tree stood outside the building, its green leaves as clean as if they had just been washed. However, Feng Lu, who was lying in bed, didn't feel clean at all. Lady Wang rushed into the room while Granny Gui guarded the door. Grabbing Feng Lu's shoulders with both hands, she asked in a harsh tone and a twisted face, Xiao Lu, tell me the truth. Did it really happen? Did it? Feng Lu didn't answer the question directly. Instead, she grasped her mother's hands and asked eagerly, Will Feng Wu tell the others? Am I going to be ruined? My reputation. Mother, help me. Help me. There was no need to ask any longer. The milk had been spilt. My poor Xiao Lu, Lady Wang wept in sorrow and rage. With everything that had happened that morning, Lady Wang was finally able to calm down by noon and proceeded to do damage control. One had to admit that Lady Wang was nothing if not a tough woman. A rainstorm hit town around noon, and a chilly wind blew as the rain poured down. The sky was dark and no one had any idea when it would stop. Granny Gui arrived, walking hastily and holding an oil paper umbrella. Because the gate of Fallen Star Yard, which had been broken a second time that morning, hadn't been replaced yet, Granny Gui walked straight in. Granny Gui held a sense of superiority toward Feng Wu's branch of the family, and she said to Granny Zhao in a haughty manner, "Where's Miss Wu? I'm taking her to see Lady Wang now." Granny Zhao frowned and said coldly, "Lady Wang doesn't necessarily have the final say. Wait here. I'll go inform Miss Wu." After that, Granny Zhao closed the door in Granny Gui's face, so abruptly that it almost hit Granny Gui's nose. Granny Gui was so frustrated. Granny Zhao came back before long, closing the door behind her, but Feng Wu was nowhere to be seen. "Where is Miss Wu?" Granny Zhao said in an indifferent tone. "Miss Wu says she can't be bothered to go out in such weather. If Lady Wang has something to say, she'll have to come here herself." That was word for word what Feng Wu said. Granny Gui almost had a stroke. How arrogant! Does Miss Wu have no respect for her superiors at all? "Miss Wu says if Lady Wang doesn't feel like it, we can always meet another day." No matter now exasperated Granny Gui appeared, Granny Zhao kept her composure, her attitude neither haughty nor humble. It went without saying that Feng Wu had the upper hand. Granny Gui stormed off, flying snow building. On hearing Granny Gui's report, Lady Wang was so furious that she smashed several vases. "How dare she? Who on earth does she think she is? Asking me to go to her?" However, Lady Wang had no choice but to do as told. For with each passing day, the risk of the secret being leaked increased. Fallen Star Yard. Feng Wu and Qiuling were the only ones here who knew exactly what had happened. Even Granny Zhao only had a general idea. "Lady Wang is here," Granny Zhao told Feng Wu. Qiuling practically idolized Feng Wu and had stars in her eyes. "Miss, even Lady Wang has conceded, and you've just been back for a day." "I knew it. I knew that nothing in this world can beat my mistress." Qiuling's admiration for her mistress was genuine, for despite the quagmire they seemed to have been dragged into, Feng Wu had been able to find a way out almost right away. Chapter 322 Unhurried and Unperturbed. Chapter 322 Unhurried and Unperturbed. Feng Wu Oni smiled mildly. "We've startled the snake, and from now on, we'll have to be extra careful. We can't afford to lower our guard over such a petty achievement." Yes. The last time Lady Wang was here, she had been surrounded by servants, which showed how eager she had been to demonstrate her power. But now, Granny Gui was the only servant she brought with her. Even with Granny Gui holding the umbrella for her, Lady Wang was drenched up to her knees after walking all the way to Fallen Star Yard. Her embroidered shoes left wet footprints on the dry floor. Lady Wang seethed with rage, but she forced herself to stay calm. "I need to talk to you in private." Lady Wang looked down at Feng Wu in a haughty manner. Feng Wu didn't even stand up. She only darted a look at Qiuling. Everyone left the room after that and Qiuling walked out last. She closed the door quietly behind her. Lady Wang glared at Feng Wu, her eyes spitting fire and blue veins popping in the corner of her forehead. There was a murderous look on her face, and she looked as if she was ready to tear Feng Wu into pieces. Feng Wu sat on a mahogany chair decorated with carved patterns. A small red clay stove sat on the table in front of her and a clay teapot simmered on it. The tea was boiling. This girl looked so sure of herself. Lady Wang was furious. Feng Wu gestured at Lady Wang to sit down with a casual smile on her face. "We've only just moved in and there's nothing I can offer you to drink. We did find a bag of tea in the kitchen this morning, but it smelled moldy and I didn't think I should disgust you with that. Try some tea made from fire chrysanthemum, then. It's quite soothing." Lady Wang glowered at Feng Wu. What on earth do you want? Feng Wu played with a cup in her slender fingers. Her movements were so elegant and pleasing to the eye. Her calmness only enraged Lady Wang further. What do you want? Speak. Lady Wang was defeated before negotiations had even started. Feng Wu darted a casual look at Lady Wang. Aunt, I can detect a murderous intention in your eyes. Is that what you're going to do to me? Lady Wang finally managed to let out a snort. It'll be as easy as stepping on an ant. Have no doubt of that. Feng Wu chuckled. Even you are doubting it yourself, or you would never have come here in a rainstorm. That successfully silenced Lady Wang. You've got a sharp tongue. Only in comparison with you. Lady Wang was rendered speechless again. She had been right. Feng Wu was born to be her archenemy. That annoying woman had given birth to an even more annoying girl. Taking a deep breath, Lady Wang tried her best to cover up her anger. She decided to reason with Feng Wu. Xiao Wu, you should know better. If word gets out, your brother and sister will be ruined, but you won't be any better off either. People will say nasty things about the daughters of the Feng clan, and you'll lose all prospects of marrying into a good family. And I can marry into a good family now? I'm the only girl in my extended family, but you have quite a few in yours, don't you? I don't have much to lose here, and I'm happy with the outcome. Feng Wu smiled. Lady Wang. Feng Wu went on smiling. Lady Wang took a deep breath. You have no proof. Proof? Feng Wu asked. How about Feng Lu's undergarments stained with her virgin blood? Feng Wu was bluffing. That piece of clothing had long been torn to pieces by that firewolf, but Lady Wang bought it right away. Rising to her feet, she pointed her finger at Feng Wu accusingly. You! Do you want me to show it to you? It'll remind you of your own son and daughter. Chapter 323. Do you like me that much? Chapter 323. Do you like me that much? Shut your mouth. Lady Wang turned scarlet red and her face contorted with rage. What is it that you want? Very simple. Playing with the teacup, Feng Wu beamed at her. I want you to stop targeting me, but I know that's not going to happen, is it? Lady Wang wanted to lie and say that she could do that, but she wasn't able to make a sound when she looked into Feng Wu's bright knowing eyes. So, what I'm asking for is very straightforward. Feng Wu was still smiling, her eyes sparkling. However, there was something intimidating about her. You can keep doing whatever you want to do to me, but leave my family out of it. Try that and I'll talk. You know I'm capable of doing that. Lady Wang clenched her fists in her sleeves. Why should I believe you? Do you have any other choice? Feng Wu sounded totally unconcerned. Lady Wang stood up abruptly. You better keep your promise. She marched off after that. Qiuling, see my aunt out. Yes. Once Lady Wang left, Qiuling asked Feng Wu criously, Miss Wu, what did you say to Lady Wang? She was so angry she almost bumped into a tree. Feng Wu only smiled. It was a great opening. She didn't worry about her own safety all that much, but she was concerned about her family. Only after she made sure that they were left in peace could she go off to do what she needed to do without worry. It was just that with Lady Wang's temperament, that deal wouldn't last very long. So, Feng Wu had two priorities now. First of all, she needed to speed up her cultivation. Only when she was strong enough could she make others listen to her and protect her own family. Secondly, she needed to network and she had to meet more influential people. When she had enough powerful friends, Lady Wang would fear her, which would give Feng Wu temporary safety. Speaking of powerful people, no one in the imperial capital suited that expression more than the crown prince. Resting her chin on her hands, Feng Wu recalled what happened in that lake the other day. Feng Wu, do you really like me that much? Feng Wu, you're very attractive, but you're also way out of line. I won't stop you from falling in love with me, but please restrain yourself and don't interfere in my life. Feng Wu narrowed her pretty eyes. Those words still irritated her. Jun Linyuan, that self-centered bastard. I'm never going near him again. It'll only bring me more humiliation. The more Feng Wu thought about it, the angrier she became. A cute cub stuck its head out of Feng Wu's sleeve and looked at her with glistening eyes. It looked worried. You know nothing, little thing. Feng Wu rubbed Feng Tutu's head. She then remembered that Feng Tutu was running out of food. Seeing that the rain had stopped, Feng Wu stuffed the cub into her chest pocket, left some instructions for Chioling, then jumped over the wall. The good thing about Fallen Star Yard was that it was very remote, which meant that Feng Wu didn't have to use the manor's front gate. Plus, she found it very convenient. However, as soon as Feng Wu landed on the other side of the wall, 10 very capable-looking guards blocked her way. Every single one of them was more capable than Feng Wu. Miss Wu, my master sends you his invitation. Chapter 324, Who is it? Chapter 324, Who is it? Feng Wu narrowed her eyes in a threatening manner. Who's your master? Her eyes ran over the 10 guards as she spoke. They were almost identical in their height and build, and they stood there ramrod straight with emotionless faces. With one look, she could tell that these men were very well trained. They had the serious and conscientious attitude of soldiers. Miss Wu will know when you get there. The captain, who led the team, beamed at Feng Wu, looking very confident of himself. What if I say no? Feng Wu smirked. Well, this might be a remote corner, but the occasional person can still pass by. I presume that Miss Wu won't like to be spotted like this? The captain said with a smile. Are you threatening me? You're mistaken, Miss Wu. What if I refuse to be threatened? Well, I'm afraid that won't be an option. The captain was way more capable than Feng Wu. Picking her up swiftly, he said, Sorry about this. The world spun before Feng Wu's eyes, and when she realized what was going on, she had been tucked under the captain's arm and was up in the air. Feng Wu! Before Feng Wu could figure out what to do, they had landed outside a grand restaurant. World Tower. Standing outside the restaurant, Feng Wu looked up and saw the vigorous strokes on the shiny golden sign. So grandiloquent and so overweeningly arrogant, thought Feng Wu. It was a 10-story building with corniced brackets that reminded one of a great hawk spreading its wings. The exterior was richly decorated in jade and gold hues, reminding one of how magnificent and luxurious a place this was. This building was as tall as the gates of the Imperial Palace and second only to the watchtower of the Forbidden City. The owner of this place had to be very well connected to build something like this, or they would have been asking for trouble. What was more impressive was that Feng Wu sensed a high concentration of spiritual essence in the air once she stepped into the building. This place was equipped with an essence-gathering formation. The captain led the way and the rest of the guards walked behind Feng Wu in single file. They walked up the stairs as if they owned the place. Just then, a figure came down from upstairs and the person darted a look at the team in passing. He spotted Feng Wu right away. Xiao Wu. That person threw himself at Feng Wu like a big butterfly. It was none other than Feng Sun. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. So far, nothing good had ever happened to her when Feng Sun was around. She hoped that today would be an exception. Geez. Feng Sun knew nothing of Feng Wu's silent prayer. He was thrilled to see Feng Wu. Hurtling down the stairs, he ran up to Feng Wu in a hurry. He patted Feng Wu on her slender shoulders in excitement. Hey, little Feng Wu, why are you here? Came to see me? Feng Wu forced a smile. You're here. So, you're not here for me? Are you looking for your uncle? Feng Sun looked enlightened. My uncle? Feng Wu frowned. With everything that had happened that morning, her uncle was still in the mood to go out and socialize. That's right. He's up there on 7th heaven. I saw him go there myself just then, Feng Sun said happily. His capability can only get him as far as 6th heaven, but for your sake, I let him squeeze into the 7th. You can thank me later. Feng Wu frowned. 6th heaven? 7th? I have no idea what you're talking about. World Tower consists of 9 heavens and beyond world, don't you know that? Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. But he soon realized what was going on and he said to Feng Wu in a commiserative tone, That's right. You were banished to Northern Border City before World Tower was built. Chapter 325, Where is my brother? Chapter 325, Where is my brother? Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. Get to the point. Feng Sun explained in excitement as he followed Feng Wu up the stairs. The first 9 floors of this building are called 9 heavens, and the higher the floor one wants to visit, the more influential one has to be. The entry level for the bottom floor is a 7th-ranked official or the owner of a medium-scale business. Seeing how excited Feng Sun was, Feng Wu was starting to get a rough idea of who the owner of World Tower was. Take Feng Yanfeng, your uncle, as an example. Someone like him can only go up as high as the 6th floor. Feng Yanfeng could only go as far as the 6th floor? If Feng Wu remembered correctly, her uncle worked in the Ministry of Rites as a ceremonial master and was a 3rd-ranked official in the imperial capital. But he could go no higher than the 6th floor. Feng Wu shook her head. You braggart. I'm not. Feng Sun snapped. Your uncle is entertaining his guest, the respectful Mr. Yen, up there. He wasn't sure he could get to the 7th floor, so he came to ask me for help. Since he's your uncle, I did him a favor and made an exception for him, and gave him access to 7th heaven. Come with me if you don't believe me. I'll take you to him. Feng Sun really showed Feng Wu the 7th floor after that. The corridor of the 7th floor was decorated with peculiar murals, and the first thing Feng Wu noticed was a painting depicting a sudden downpour. Wait. Feng Wu's eyes flickered. The painting didn't seem special at first glance, but she sensed something on the second. After observing it closely, Feng Wu saw that it wasn't any ordinary rainfall, but a shower of swords. Feng Sun explained to Feng Wu with a gloating smile, each floor has different menus and different murals. The density of the spiritual essence differs from one floor to the other as well. The customers are strictly stratified here, and that's why everyone tries their best to move up the floors. They arrived outside a private room as they spoke, and they could faintly make out the conversation inside. You flatter me, Sir Yen. Your daughter is smart and lovely and she's sure to have a bright future. Here's to your daughter. Sir Yen, of course you're not old. You're 3 years younger than me. Sir Yen. The person's tone was filled with fulsome flattery, but he wasn't doing a very good job at making his ingratiating words convincing enough. That voice belonged to none other than Feng Yanfeng, Feng Wu's uncle. Sir Yen is my eldest aunt's husband, said Feng Sun. Your uncle works in the Ministry of Rites, but that's not a very lucrative department and has little real power. So, he wants to get transferred to the Ministry of Official Personnel. It just so happens that the post of assistant minister there needs to be filled. Your uncle is the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rites, so giving him that same position in a different ministry is doable, but the Ministry of Official Personnel has always been a popular one and everyone beats down the door to get it. How about I talk to my uncle for you? Feng Wu never liked her uncle that much, so she shook her head. Don't bother. Feng Sun only thought that Feng Wu was being polite and he chuckled. My uncle can make it happen, although it'll need some maneuvering. I can always go ask Boss Jun for help. It'll be a piece of cake for him. Jun Linyuan? Feng Wu felt her temper rise at the mention of that name. She declined the offer again with an emotionless tone. No thanks. Feng Sun tried to be persuasive. Little Feng Wu, don't be so stubborn. With your dad missing, your uncle is the only one who represents your clan. Your status will rise with him. Feng Sun had little idea of the complicated relationships in the Feng clan. Feng Wu stared at him. Why is my dad missing? Well, how am I supposed to know that? And what about my brother? Feng Wu kept her gaze on Feng Sun. Right, only then was Feng Sun reminded of Feng Xiaoqi, and he slapped the back of his head. You know what? I still have that thing I need to take care of, and off I go. Chapter 326. So, do you want to sit on my lap? Chapter 326. So, do you want to sit on my lap? Feng Sun quickly slipped away after those words. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. Feng Sun was so evasive. Had something happened to Xiaoqi? At that thought, she turned to the captain. Take me to Jun Linyuan now. She was sure by now that their master could be no one but Jun Linyuan himself. The captain showed Feng Wu all the way up the stairs. They walked past the 7th, 8th, and 9th floors, until they were on the 10th, which was known as Beyond World. The entire 10th floor was empty and spacious. A Bollywood hollowed-out screen stood in the middle and smoke curled up in the air, giving the whole setting a charming atmosphere. Feng Wu saw a graceful, aloof teenager on the other side of the screen. He sat there casually at a tea table. He had finely chiseled features that reminded one of a sculpture. Sitting there with his eyes lowered, he looked fairer than the ice on the highest mountain peaks. There was something so elegant and unattainable about him. Even without his noble status and his good looks, one couldn't overlook that quality he possessed. He was silently refusing the approach of any strangers with that unsmiling face. Jun Linyuan. Even Feng Wu was dazed a little when she saw Jun Linyuan sitting there like a classic beauty. Inside the ring, Little Phoenix began to jump around as the tiny abnormal flame in Feng Wu's mind began to stir. The abnormal flame! The abnormal flame! Feng Wu kept her face straight and acted as if she had heard nothing. Little Phoenix kept on pounding and scratching the wall, and it screeched at the top of its lungs. Kiss him! Kiss him! Kiss him! Little Phoenix flapped its wings and urged Feng Wu. Feng Wu was speechless. Jun Linyuan raised his head, and he looked as intimidating as ever. He frowned and didn't seem happy to see Feng Wu here. What are you doing here? Feng Wu snapped. Didn't you force me to come here? Jun Linyuan darted a look at the captain of his guards and asked arrogantly, Did you force her? Chang San said sincerely, We didn't. Miss Feng came of her own will. Feng Wu pointed at Jun Linyuan and Chang San. You people. Fine. I'll leave now. Feng Wu then turned to leave. However, Chang San and the others stopped her. The 10 guards stood in a line, blocking her way. Feng Wu was vexed. Turning around, she glared at Jun Linyuan. I thought I wasn't welcome here. Why are you stopping me from leaving? The Crown Prince replied with a casual smile on his face. You're here, aren't you? You have my permission to sit. I don't need your permission, and I'm not sitting on a chair. Feng Wu thought she was going to explode. So, are you dreaming about sitting on my lap? Jun Linyuan turned his brooding gaze on her, making her stomach lurch. Feng Wu! For a split second, Feng Wu suspected that Jun Linyuan was flirting with her rather than ridiculing her. However, she rejected that possibility right away. Jun Linyuan abhorred her, so there was no way that he would flirt with her. He had to be mocking her. Feng Wu took a deep breath to calm down. She realized that Jun Linyuan was the only one that could set her off this easily. The most casual comment he made could make her go off like a dynamite. Feng Wu glowered at Jun Linyuan. Where's Xiaoqi? The Crown Prince gestured at her to come closer with his slender fingers. Feng Wu ignored him. Jun Linyuan kept his gaze on her, looking as if he had all the time in the world. Since she was in need of an answer, Feng Wu decided to compromise. She went up to Jun Linyuan, looking very grumpy. Chapter 327 Kiss. 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 Chapter 327 Kiss. 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 With a glance at the Crown Prince, Chang San and the others left the room as quiet as cats, and they even closed the door behind them. Where's Xiaoqi? What have you done to him? Feng Wu met Jun Linyuan's gaze and her eyes flickered, as if they were emitting heat. Jun Linyuan gestured at his lap. What? Feng Wu looked at him in confusion. Jun Linyuan darted her a lofty look. Get up here yourself, Feng Wu. She stared at Jun Linyuan in astonishment, looking like a bristling bird. She bit her lower lip so hard that it almost bled. Feng Wu clenched her fists in rage. Jun Linyuan, this is ridiculous. The teenage crown prince felt like a different person from what she knew before. He had been this aloof, detached, and cold person for as long as she could remember, but now, there was something mesmerizing in his eyes, and she could almost call him enchanting. I thought you wanted to know if Feng Xiaoqi is still alive. His casual tone made Feng Wu's heart pound and her body went stiff. That can't be. You took Xiaoqi away only for his blood. How can he be dead? Unless. Feng Wu's pupils contracted and she glowered at Jun Linyuan with eyes that could spit fire. Did you turn him into a walking dead blood container? Jun Linyuan seemed to have made up his mind not to say a word. I don't believe you. Feng Wu turned to leave, but she realized that she couldn't pull the door open. Frustrated, she ran to the window, trying to climb out from there. However, it was as tightly shut as the door, and it wouldn't budge no matter how hard she tried. Feng Wu then pounded the wall, but the wood it was made from was harder than iron. Turning around, Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan then waved his hand and Feng Wu flew toward him despite herself. Before she realized it, she was in Jun Linyuan's arms. Jun Linyuan chuckled and his eyes twinkled. His face was so close to hers. Feng Wu raised a hand, trying to slap him. However, his strong hand caught hers before she could touch him. Infuriated, Feng Wu drew out a dagger with her free right hand and stabbed at Jun Linyuan's heart. Thud! The dagger fell to the floor and both of Feng Wu's arms were pinned behind her back. He was very close. She could smell his minty breath on her face. The teenage girl had a soft, tempting body, and her pink lips looked as sweet as honey. He was tempted to taste them. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Little Phoenix had been following the proceedings this whole time, and it was going through a tumult of emotions. Right now, it flapped its wings and shook in excitement. Kiss him, and the abnormal flame would be complete. It would be able to get out. Where's Xiaoqi? Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan coldly. The crown prince smiled a little. I would have told you if you had sat on my lap willingly just then. Jun Linyuan had never been a fan of restraining himself. He always followed his heart. On his way back to the imperial capital, he had made a mental note. If he still couldn't stop thinking about her after a month, he would never let her go. Today was the last day of that 1-month period and he couldn't wait to see Feng Wu. He always did what he wanted. Feng Wu was practically fuming. What happened to that proud, unattainable crown prince? This person in front of her here was acting like the biggest jerk. Chapter 328 The Difficult Woman. Chapter 328 The Difficult Woman. What do you want? Feng Wu clenched her fists and bit her lip. Jun Linyuan's husky voice had a mesmerizing quality to it. Kiss me and I'll tell you. You wish, Feng Wu said between gritted teeth. The guy didn't even like her and he was doing this just to humiliate her. How abominable! However, Jun Linyuan's mouth was on hers before she could react. Blood rushed into Feng Wu's head, her back stiffened, and her head went blank. She felt as if fire was burning through her body. As soon as their lips touched, Feng Wu bit his lower lip. Blood oozed out, and the taste filled their mouths. Feng Wu was stunned. She had just bitten Jun Linyuan. Would he kill her now? Feng Wu had once seen with her own eyes a magical bird peck Jun Linyuan's finger. The next second, the bird had been squeezed to a pulp. She had only been 5 years old then. Therefore, she had always remembered Jun Linyuan as this bloodthirsty, savage man. Feng Wu looked up and glared at Jun Linyuan involuntarily, her eyes as alert as a lone wolf's. As expected, she saw surprise in Jun Linyuan's eyes. Jun Linyuan was indeed baffled. Wasn't this girl supposed to be hopelessly in love with him? Since she wouldn't come to him, he had taken the initiative instead, but it seemed that she had gotten used to turning him down. Playing hard to get? Jun Linyuan snickered and pinned Feng Wu's arms behind her back again. He said with a smirk, "Are you having fun?" Feng Wu almost fainted from anger. What was he talking about? Why did Jun Linyuan and Feng Sun believe in the same thing, that she was head over heels in love with the crown prince? Feng Wu almost broke into tears, but she fought them back stubbornly. The slim teenage girl had skin fairer than snow. Her long eyelashes were damp, but she wouldn't let any tears fall. Feng Wu had a beautiful mother, who was indisputably the most beautiful lady in the entire Junwu Empire. A look of pity flickered in Jun Linyuan's brooding eyes, something he didn't even realize himself. He then caressed Feng Wu's smooth cheek with his calloused fingertip. His fingers seemed to set her on fire wherever they touched. Feng Wu trembled inside out. Her eyes had gone red from crying, but she kept her gaze on him stubbornly. The 13-year-old girl reminded him of a young lion. Jun Linyuan sympathized with her as well as felt amused. He chuckled. "You can't stand the least bit injustice, can you?" Feng Wu gritted her teeth. "I just find it strange, and there's something I need to ask you." "Shoot." Feng Wu smirked. "Jun Linyuan, didn't you say yourself that I should mind my status and stay away from you? Why did you seek me out and why are you acting all flirty? This is not like you at all. What exactly do you want?" She believed that one should know their enemy as well as they knew themselves. "You want to know? Tell me." Feng Wu scowled. Jun Linyuan looked very arrogant as he said in a conceited tone, "Because you like me so much, I thought I would play nice and give you this chance, but you bit me. TSK. Feng Wu was going to tell him to go to hell with his chance when Jun Linyuan held her puffed cheeks between his hands and stressed each word. "You difficult woman. This is a great honor I'm offering you here." Chapter 329 Bao Er's Cat. Chapter 329 Bao Er's Cat. Feng Wu thought she was going to have a stroke. "I don't need it. Too late. I was never in love with you. Keep lying and you'll never see Feng Xiaoqi again." "Feng Wu." "I'm a medicine refiner." Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan earnestly, her eyes sparkling. "I can help you with Bao Er's illness, but you have to give me back my brother." "No." "Jun Linyuan, you have Bao Er already. Why won't you leave me alone? You should be loyal to her. You're betraying her love." Feng Wu clenched her fists in anger. Jun Linyuan gave Feng Wu an ineffable look, as if he had just heard something idiotic. "Was it something I said?" Feng Wu was baffled. Jun Linyuan's eyes looked like bottomless pools. He rose to his feet all of a sudden and Feng Wu was back on her feet. Instinctively, she stumbled back until she was several meters away from Jun Linyuan. She then stood there, on high alert. Jun Linyuan walked out of the room without giving her another look. So, this Bao Er was really a taboo subject that couldn't be mentioned at all? So much so that he would storm off at the sound of the name. If that was the case, that girl would also be his soft spot, which meant that it would be something Feng Wu could take advantage of. Jun Linyuan wasn't that unassailable teenager anymore. "What are you thinking?" Jun Linyuan halted and turned around to look at Feng Wu. The sun shone behind him, throwing his face into sharp relief. In that glow, his face looked even more enchanting. "Come here." Jun Linyuan beckoned at Feng Wu, as if he was summoning a pet. Feng Wu decided to ignore him. Jun Linyuan snickered. "Do I have to do everything myself?" Only then did Feng Wu remember Jun Linyuan's ability to draw her toward him from a distance away. Feng Wu dashed to his side as soon as he raised an arm, and she looked up at him with her limpid eyes. I can walk myself. She reminded him so much of Bao Er's cat, an adorable but stubborn little thing. Jun Linyuan put his big hand on Feng Wu's head. She was still a child and her head barely reached his shoulders. She had just a hint of childish roundness left around her chin, which made her face as plump as a steamed bun, tempting him to give it a bite. The Crown Prince never stretched himself thin. He had reacted clumsily to his feelings only because he had never felt this way before. And he was a very quick learner. Taking Feng Wu's delicate chin between his fingers, he bent down and aimed his mouth at her plump cheek. Feng Wu was furious. What was wrong with this man? Was she some kind of food now? Not only did he kiss her, he had to suck her cheek as if he was eating some succulent thing. Feng Wu stomped down on Jun Linyuan's foot. She was wearing lambskin boots that day with solid heels, and she spared no effort. However, Jun Linyuan wasn't that easily defeated. With a flip of his foot, he tripped Feng Wu and the girl fell toward him. The Crown Prince gave her a mesmerizing smile. Despite what you say, your body is very honest. Feng Wu almost choked on her own spit. The next thing she knew, Jun Linyuan had thrown her over his shoulder and marched out of the room. Put me down! Put me down! Jun Linyuan carried Feng Wu over one shoulder and her head hung down behind his back. He steadied her by putting a hand on her buttocks as he walked down the stairs. Outside the door, 10 guards stood there waiting in a line. Chang San, the captain, was dumbfounded when he saw the Crown Prince carry Miss Wu out that way. Chapter 330 Finally, a girl for His Royal Highness. Chapter 330. Finally, a girl for His Royal Highness. Their Crown Prince was known to be a neat freak, had no interest in girls, and was lofty, intimidating, and not approachable at all. However, he had a girl over his shoulder now, and that girl didn't seem to want to be there. She was flailing both arms as if she was drowning while yelling, "Let go of me." Chang San thought that he was hallucinating. He rubbed his eyes, but nothing changed. Grabbing one of his men, he pinched the guy on the arm. "SSS. Captain, that hurts." The guy almost broke into tears. "So, I'm not dreaming. Oh God." Chang San came back to himself and followed his master in a hurry. Feng Wu's eyes were bloodshot red from her rage. What the hell was this guy doing? If the others saw her like this, it would be the end of her. "Your Royal Highness," when they reached the 7th floor, the customers inside had just come out after their meal and spotted Jun Linyuan. That voice. Feng Wu stiffened. It was none other than Feng Yanfeng, her uncle. Why did it have to be him? Feng Wu buried her face in Jun Linyuan's back. Feng Yanfeng, who was so condescending in front of Feng Wu, was too nervous to even breathe when Jun Linyuan was around. Even Sir Yen, the minister of both the Grand Council and the Ministry of Official Personnel, seemed perturbed when he first saw Jun Linyuan. "Your Royal Highness!" The politician, whom Feng Yanfeng considered a mogul, bowed to Jun Linyuan and put on a warm smile. Jun Linyuan ignored Feng Yanfeng completely, but only gave Sir Yen a brief glance. The overbearing air he gave off immediately flustered the others. Feng Wu was awfully quiet now, for she didn't want to draw any attention. If her uncle found out about her relationship with Jun Linyuan, all hell would break loose. Jun Linyuan marched off with Feng Wu hanging over his shoulder, followed by the solemn-faced Chang San. "Master Chang San, His Royal Highness is..." Feng Yanfeng was too intimidated to speak around Jun Linyuan and even addressed the captain of the guard as Master Chang San. Officially, Chang San was a military officer of junior 3rd rank, while Feng Yanfeng was a senior 3rd-ranked official. Feng Yanfeng was slightly senior in terms of their ranking, and he didn't have to address the captain with that respectful term. But Chang San was Jun Linyuan's personal guard, and no one would want to mess with someone in that position. Even Sir Yen cupped his hands politely at Chang San. "General Chang, who was that young lady?" Chong San was a tame cat in front of Jun Linyuan, but he was all distant and solemn to the other officials. I wouldn't recommend meddling in His Royal Highness's personal affairs. I think my lords know what His Royal Highness is like. After that, Chong San left with the guards. Would anyone accuse Chong San of being disrespectful? Who would be bold enough to do that? Stroking his goatee, Sir Yen narrowed his eyes, the look on his face indecipherable. Feng Yanfeng looked shaken. His Royal Highness is finally into girls. A lot of families will become very excited. Yen Shifan darted a glance at Feng Yanfeng. Why, Master Feng, are you jealous? Of course not. You flatter me. Feng Yanfeng waved his hands, looking flustered. Yen Shifan gave Feng Yanfeng a strange look. His Royal Highness used to be betrothed to one of your girls back then, and you were so close to becoming a relative of the Crown Prince. Chapter 331. How about making Xiao Wu the Crown Prince's concubine? Chapter 331. How about making Xiao Wu the Crown Prince's concubine? That was exactly what Feng Yanfeng had been lamenting. He had never hated Feng Wu so much. The royal family would never have broken off the engagement if she hadn't become crippled. And if that hadn't happened, the Feng clan wouldn't have declined so significantly until it lost its status as one of the 9 major clans and become one of the nobodies. I was told that the crippled girl of your clan has come back to the imperial capital? Yen asked in passing. Sir Yen, you know about that as well. Yen gave him a half-smile. After all, she was engaged to His Royal Highness once, and she'll always get unwanted attention for it. Poor kid. I can't imagine what family would want her as a daughter-in-law. Feng Yanfeng couldn't get those words out of his head on his way back home. No family would want Feng Wu as their daughter-in-law. Who would dare marry a girl who had been the Crown Prince's fiancée once? Flying snow building. Lady Wang had calmed down since talking to Feng Wu, and her head had spun the entire afternoon. She was trying to figure out a way to get rid of Feng Wu without raising an alarm. She set that task aside when Feng Yanfeng came back. Feng Yanfeng had taken several concubines over the years, but thanks to her perfect superficial charms, Lady Wang had never fallen out of favor. Seeing that Feng Yanfeng was frowning, she asked, My lord, what's bothering you? Feng Yanfeng sighed. I met the Crown Prince today. Lady Wang's eyes lit up. Had her husband somehow gotten into the Crown Prince's circle? Feng Yanfeng said, I saw with my own eyes His Royal Highness come out with a girl hanging over his shoulder. After all these years, this is the first time the Crown Prince has shown up with a girl. It's finally the time. Lady Wang nodded. I see. Well, he's 18 now. Feng Yanfeng sighed. Xiao Wu is without cultivation and crippled now, not to mention that His Royal Highness has cancelled their engagement. I can't imagine that anyone would want to marry her. Lady Wang laughed inwardly. It was a great pleasure for her to see Feng Wu in dire straits. So, here's what I've been thinking. How about we give Xiao Wu to His Royal Highness as a concubine? Feng Yanfeng asked. I'm not being boastful, but Xiao Wu is really a good-looking girl. If she puts her mind to it, there's no reason that His Royal Highness wouldn't like her. Lady Wang's heart sank. Even as a woman, Lady Wang had to admit that Feng Wu was a rare beauty, which was why she would never let Feng Wu go to court. She and Feng Wu had shed all pretense of cordiality, and once Feng Wu was in the Crown Prince's good graces, she might give some thought to helping the Feng clan, but Lady Wang was sure that the girl wouldn't even blink before ruining her. A murderous look flickered in Lady Wang's eyes, but she still beamed at Feng Yanfeng. My lord, I'm not sure that would be appropriate. Why? Feng Yanfeng's eyes widened. If His Royal Highness really likes Xiao Wu, I won't have to beg around for a same-level transfer from the Ministry of Rights to the Ministry of Official Personnel. His Royal Highness can make it happen with a flick of his finger. What do you have to lose if His Royal Highness doesn't like her? She's an abandoned pawn anyway. Having dealt with Feng Wu herself, Lady Wang knew how tough an enemy Feng Wu was, and she wasn't going to give Feng Wu more opportunities. However, Feng Yanfeng was really stubborn at the moment. Trying to persuade him would only push him further away from Lady Wang. The longer he thought about it, the more excited Feng Yanfeng became. He smacked the table and rose to his feet. You know what? I need to tell Xiao Wu this great news now. Oh, and start working on Xiao Wu's new clothes and jewelry. Feng Yanfeng hurried off after that. Chapter 332. That's biting, not kissing. Chapter 332. That's biting, not kissing. Lady Wang almost snapped as she watched her husband hurry off. Was he in a rush to tell Feng Wu, or was he too eager to see someone else? Meanwhile, Feng Wu was hanging over Jun Linyuan's shoulder. An excited voice was ringing in her head. It was Little Phoenix, who was shouting at her. Can you feel it? Can you feel it? What? Feng Wu was bewildered and replied in her head. Little Phoenix was squeaking in excitement. That man that showed up just then, he had something spectacular on him. So? Feng Wu wasn't very interested. It was one of the key pieces to waking up your master. Do you want to save him or not? What? Feng Wu almost jumped to her feet. Yes. Yes, I do. Feng Wu got carried away and cried out loudly. By now, Jun Linyuan had stuffed Feng Wu into the carriage and was bending down toward her when Feng Wu cried out, I do. Jun Linyuan smirked and caressed Feng Wu's smooth cheek with his calloused fingertips, his voice husky. You do. Feng Wu was startled by Jun Linyuan's hot breath on her cheeks. When she came back to herself, she realized that Jun Linyuan was way too close. His face was right in front of hers, to the point that she could accidentally kiss him. Kiss him. Kiss. Now! Little Phoenix squeaked. It would be shoving on the back of Feng Wu's head if it was outside now. However, Feng Wu pushed Jun Linyuan away and dashed diagonally to the corner on the other side of the carriage. It was as far away as she could get inside this carriage. Little Phoenix felt like crying. Gosh. It's not like you haven't kissed him before. You've done it 3 times already. What difference will it make to do it again? Little Phoenix cried out. Kiss him and I can get out of here. I'll be able to protect you and fly you around. Just kiss him. I'm begging you. Feng Wu pursed her lips and shook her head repeatedly. He kissed me just then in Beyond World. Why are you still not out? Geez. You call that a kiss? You were biting him. Your tongue has to touch his to lure that abnormal flame to your side when his guard is down. Pull yourself together. Feng Wu wanted to cry. She didn't want to pull anything. Jun Linyuan raised his thick, straight eyebrows and stared at Feng Wu with his brooding eyes. He then smiled and beckoned at Feng Wu with a finger. Get over here. No. Feng Wu held onto the wall of the carriage and refused adamantly. I'll go to you then. Jun Linyuan rose to his feet. Seeing this, Feng Wu turned around and tried to jump out of the carriage. However, she didn't stand a chance when Jun Linyuan was around. No one knew what happened, but before Feng Wu realized it, she was lying flat on her back. The next second, Jun Linyuan fell on top of her. Feng Wu grunted and grabbed onto Jun Linyuan's arms involuntarily. His impeccable face was right in front of her. His straight eyebrows were full and dark. His eyelashes were dense and curly. His bright eyes were mesmerizing, and right now they were staring at her, which reminded her of a cheetah looking at its prey. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. Little Phoenix had lost hope already. It was venting its grudges inwardly about how cowardly its master was, when the Crown Prince took the initiative and pinned Feng Wu down. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Little Phoenix hooted like a cheerleader. You tripped me on purpose. Jun Linyuan blamed his victim first. Feng Wu blinked. How she missed that old June Linyuan who was aloof, detached, and treated her as if she didn't exist. Chapter 333 Feng Wu, You Wild Thing. Chapter 333 Feng Wu, You Wild Thing. June Linyuan's stunning face moved closer and closer, and Feng Wu could feel his hot breath on her face. Their lips almost touched when Feng Wu put her hand over her mouth, and June Linyuan's lips landed on the back of her hand. The skin on her hand was so fair that her fingertips seemed transparent. He had an impulse to take them into his mouth. Feng Wu glared at June Linyuan. He had completely overpowered her, and there was nothing she could do about it. It was more than the difference in physical strength between men and women, but the demonstration of the chasm between their capabilities. Feng Wu had never hated Zhuo Qingluan like she did now. She had been of the same cultivation level as June Linyuan back then. Had it not been for Zhuo Qingluan, who had destroyed Feng Wu's true phoenix blood, Feng Wu would never be this helpless. The thought frustrated Feng Wu greatly, and she glared at June Linyuan with her limpid bright eyes. The teenage girl was an unparalleled beauty to begin with. Right now, her flushed cheeks and the aggrieved look on her face could soften the toughest heart. June Linyuan's slender fingers moved into action, and he began to undo Feng Wu's clothes. Feng Wu's back stiffened right away. Angry and scared, she caught June Linyuan's hands involuntarily and cried out, "June Linyuan, what do you think, HM?" Before she could finish her sentence, June Linyuan had lowered his head and covered her mouth with his. Feng Wu's eyes widened and her pupils contracted. It was a distraction. June Linyuan was so evil. How could he do that? Feng Wu was almost in tears and the rims of her eyes turned red. However, Little Phoenix was flailing its wings in the ring frantically as it prompted Feng Wu, "It's already happening, so make full use of it. Otherwise, you'll be wasting the opportunity." Feng Wu could no longer think straight. Blood rushed to her head and she was overwhelmed with her rage. He was kissing her anyway, so the hell with it. She would make something out of it. At that thought, Feng Wu put a slim arm around June Linyuan's neck and pressed the back of his head down with the other hand. She pulled June Linyuan down toward her with all her strength. If this was a contest, she wasn't going to let him win. No longer holding herself back, Feng Wu wrapped herself around June Linyuan and gnawed on his mouth. June Linyuan stiffened and blood rushed to his head. He had never seen Feng Wu as wild as this, and it was, well, a pleasant surprise. June Linyuan gloated after the initial shock. Feng Sun was right. Little Feng Wu was crazy about him. Despite her repeated refusals, her body had betrayed her. Somewhere deep in Feng Wu's mind, where June Linyuan couldn't see. Kiss him. Yes. 50% now. 55%. 60%. Yes. Almost there. Just a little bit longer. Hold on there and keep breathing. Yes, breathe in. Little Phoenix was so nervous and excited at the same time. Soon, that little flame in Feng Wu's mind was going to grow into a complete abnormal flame, and with that, Little Phoenix would be able to leave this place, ha ha ha. This was so unnerving. Little Phoenix's heart pounded, fearing that something would happen to intrude on them. 80%, 85%, 90%. Little Phoenix's exhilarated voice kept ringing in Feng Wu's head. Chapter 334 Feng Wu was so crazy about him. Chapter 334 Feng Wu was so crazy about him. Feng Wu was trembling all over. She was completely absorbed in the kiss and had forgotten all about herself and where she was. All she knew was that she had to keep sucking that fire out of June Linyuan, and she wouldn't let go of his tongue. June Linyuan tried to stop several times, but Feng Wu wouldn't allow it. Before they realized it, Feng Wu was on the top and straddling June Linyuan. The Crown Prince was completely baffled. He knew that Feng Wu liked him, but he had no idea that Feng Wu was so crazy about him. It was as if she wanted to eat him whole. How wild! 97%, 98%, 99%, 100%. Ah! As soon as little Phoenix cried out that last syllable, Feng Wu felt as if a fireball had exploded in her head. Rumble! Feng Wu, who had lost herself in the kiss, slumped back all of a sudden. She let go of Jun Linyuan and almost fell over. The Crown Prince was going to taunt Feng Wu, but he immediately realized that something wasn't right. Feng Wu! Little Feng Wu! Wake up! Feng Wu lay still on the floor with her eyes shut and her face pale. She was barely breathing. The Crown Prince, who had always been able to keep his composure no matter what, was flustered for the first time. Lifting the curtain of his carriage, he cried out, "We're going back! Now!" Chang San was the one driving the carriage. He was deeply perturbed by the fear in the Crown Prince's voice. Fear? The Crown Prince that could terrorize his victims with just the sound of his name was actually capable of expressing fear? Chang San couldn't imagine it. He had only just been able to turn the horses around when he felt the carriage become lighter. Looking back, he saw that Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu were no longer inside. "Your Royal Highness!" Chang San cried out in surprise. However, with Feng Wu in his arms, Jun Linyuan had already jumped onto the roof. The streets of the imperial capital were planned in such a way that they all led in one direction. The eastern main street could lead one straight to the Forbidden City. Right now, a figure skimmed over the roofs along the eastern main road at lightning speed, so fast that those who spotted it thought that they were hallucinating. Jun Linyuan had wrapped Feng Wu in his thick cape as he ran along the edges of the roofs, so as to keep her from the cold rain. The royal palace, the Bureau of Physicians. It was safe to say that the best medicine refiners of all in the imperial capital, if not the entire Junwu Empire, worked here. The most junior ones here were senior medicine refiners and the majority were of the master level. As for the head of the bureau, he was a master refiner. Right now, the medicine refiners were discussing the Empress Dowager's malady. Her Majesty caught a cold, that's all. You're overdoing it with your prescription. Master Bai frowned. A cold? That's just the superficial symptoms. Her Majesty has long been suffering from a hidden disease that this cold is going to set off. If I've guessed correctly, a series of symptoms will follow. Master He frowned. The heated discussion continued when, bang! Someone kicked the door hard. The bureau was a well-equipped institute, but the thick door plate came off at that kick. Who is that? How dare you act wildly in this place? Do you have a death wish? However, they saw the Crown Prince when they turned to look. He stood there like a fiend, giving off a bone-chilling air. WTF. Everyone blanched, especially Masters Bai and He, who had scolded the intruder. Both fell to their knees. Chapter 335 Jun Linyuan the Bully. Chapter 335 Jun Linyuan the Bully. Your Royal Highness! Fear of Jun Linyuan had never stemmed from his prestigious status, but his unfathomable capability, his intimidating demeanor, and his unpredictable temper. Bathed in light from behind, Jun Linyuan looked stunning. He stood there towering over the others in his luxurious cape. In his arms, Feng Wu looked as tiny as a child. Master Chu, Jun Linyuan called out in an authoritative tone and scanned the room with his piercing eyes. The look on his face was resolute and emotionless. Right now, no one could tell how frightened he actually was, for they were all too scared to even look up at him. Master Bai smiled bitterly. They would rather treat the Emperor himself than the terrifying Crown Prince. However, as the most senior medicine refiner in the room, Master Bai had no choice but to force himself to step out. Your Royal Highness, to what do we owe this pleasure? Get me Chu Bai. You can all start looking for new jobs if he's not here in 15 minutes. It was very rare for the reticent Jun Linyuan to say that much in one sentence. However, to the others, the words were like bullets hitting their chest. Master Bai and the others grimaced. Medicine refiners were supposed to enjoy a higher status than cultivators. However, even Master Chu, their head, had to bend to the Crown Prince's will. Of course. I'll go get Master Chu now. Master Bai rushed out, fleeing from the Crown Prince's piercing gaze. The rest of the medicine refiners tried to excuse themselves from the room as well when Jun Lin Yuan pointed at Master He. You, come here. Treat her. Master He's forehead was covered with sweat. It was too late to run away now and his only option was to do as told. Your Royal Highness, please lay the young lady on the bed so that I can feel her pulse. You can't do it when I'm carrying her? Jun Lin Yuan darted a grim look at Master He. Yes, of course I can. Master He shuddered and stood at attention. The others exchanged looks of bewilderment. Who on earth was this young woman, whose face was buried in the Crown Prince's cape? Didn't the Crown Prince hate it when other women touched him? But he was willing to go through all this trouble now just for her. Immediately, everyone was intrigued by this girl half hidden in the cape, but they kept their curiosity to themselves and would only steal glances at her out of the corners of their eyes. Master Bai ran as fast as he could. Meanwhile, Master Chu was treating his patient elsewhere. Congratulations, Your Majesty. You're with child, Master Chu said in an impassive voice. The Empress, on the other hand, burst into joyful tears. I'm pregnant. I'm giving the Emperor a son. Mother, please don't get too excited. We need to watch out for your mood now. A pretty teenage girl with rosy lips and white teeth stood beside Empress Gao. She was the third daughter of the Emperor. The princess had always been a willful girl, but now she was all smiles and kind-looking, which was very rare for her. Just then, Empress Gao's servant hurried in. Your Majesty, Master Bai is outside. Before he could finish, Master Bai had rushed into the room like a gust of wind. He grabbed Master Chu by the arm and dragged the latter away, yelling, Master Chu, hurry up! The Crown Prince is tearing the bureau apart. Master Chu's unperturbed face turned grim right away. His Royal Highness. Yes, that's right. His Royal Highness is angry and there will be consequences. Come quickly. Master Bai was almost in tears. The Crown Prince was a man of his word, especially when it came to the promises he made. His words were sometimes more credible than an imperial edict. He wasn't joking about taking the bureau apart. Chapter 336, It's Driving Little Phoenix Crazy. Chapter 336, It's Driving Little Phoenix Crazy. Master Chu knew too well to defy the Crown Prince's order. He didn't even ask for permission to leave before dashing out. Come quickly! Master Bai and Master Chu were out of sight in the blink of an eye, leaving Empress Gao and the princess behind, who eyed each other in bewilderment. The excited look on Empress Gao's face was immediately replaced by rage. Jun Lin Yuan. Him again. Empress Gao clenched her fists so tightly that her fingernails dug into her palms. Was he born into this world just to annoy me? The princess was equally infuriated. He's doing it on purpose. I'm sure of it. He took the imperial physician away as soon as he heard about your pregnancy. Mother, he's abominable. However, talking about Jun Lin Yuan behind his back was all that third princess was bold enough to do. She was like a kitten when the Crown Prince was around. What on earth is going on? Empress Gao darted a piercing look at the chief steward. The chief steward replied with a bow. According to Master Bai, His Royal Highness arrived at the Bureau of Physicians with a young woman. A young woman? The princess's pupils contracted and she rose to her feet. I'll go have a look. Master Chu ran as fast as he could and was finally able to reach the bureau within the time limit. Your Royal Highness! He was still panting when Jun Lin Yuan glanced at him with his emotionless eyes. Need some rest? No, of course not. 1 minute. I'll be right there. Master Chu wouldn't act so timidly even around the Emperor himself. However, one cold look from Jun Linyuan and he felt frozen to the core. How could anyone say no to this teenager? After taking a deep breath to calm himself down, Master Chu felt Feng Wu's pulse. His eyebrows knitted tighter and tighter. What do you see? Jun Linyuan's eyes seemed to spit fire and Master Chu feared that the Crown Prince would explode as soon as he said something the latter didn't like. Avoiding Jun Linyuan's eyes and keeping his gaze on the latter's nose, Master Chu said, "The young lady has a fire poison in her head and it's spreading. If we don't do something to stop it, I'm afraid." What? Little poisonous arrows were shooting out of the Crown Prince's eyes now. Despite how flustered he was, Master Chu managed to finish the sentence. "If we let the fire poison spread, even if the young lady can survive it, she'll become a retard." The next second, a pair of strong hands wrapped around Master Chu's neck and a cold voice rang out. "Anything happens to her, you're all going down with her. I'm not going to repeat it." And the Crown Prince always meant what he said. Everyone knew that, which was why all the physicians in the room dropped to their knees. They wanted to cry, but no tears would come. Even His Majesty wouldn't have such scarce regard for human life. The thought of going to His Majesty for help crossed their minds, but they then remembered that when the Crown Prince was enraged, even the Emperor himself would back off. For a moment everyone despaired. Master Chu said in a hurry, "I can do it. I can. We'll just eradicate the fire poison." "Do it," the Crown Prince said with an impassive face. Poor Feng Wu. She had passed out and had no idea what they were going to do to her hard-earned achievement. The eradication of the fire poison needed to be carried out with great care. Little Phoenix thought that it was going to lose its mind. After everything Feng Wu had done at the cost of using herself as bait, they were finally able to get enough of that external energy to complete the little abnormal flame. Little Phoenix was going to consume that abnormal flame when it realized in frustration that someone was trying to take it away. Chapter 337, Why is Life So Hard? Chapter 337, Why is life so hard? Taking the flame away? Not in a million years. Little Phoenix turned the abnormal flame into the shape of a rope and wrapped it around itself. It held tightly onto the rope and wouldn't let go no matter what. Master Chu's forehead was covered with sweat. His face went pale and he had a bitter taste in his mouth. Jun Linyuan stared at him grimly. "Can you do it or not?" Master Chu was almost in tears and he said in a trembling voice, "Your Royal Highness, there's something strange about the fire poison. It seems to have taken root and I can't get it out." He was able to loosen it a little at first, but soon it was like having a tug-of-war. He couldn't pull it out no matter how hard he tried. After asking Master Chu exactly what he had to do to remove the poison, Jun Linyuan put a palm on Feng Wu's forehead. No one had any idea how he did it, but when he lifted his hand away from her forehead, there was a string of golden flame between his index and middle fingers. Master Chu waved his fists in excitement. Yes, that's it. That's the fire poison." Meanwhile, Little Phoenix was almost in tears. It had no idea what was happening, but it couldn't stop spinning as the rope of flame was drawn away. It felt like an unraveled sweater. The spinning made the bird nauseated, but there was nothing it could do. That formidable power took control of the flame, and it went on spinning. What a frightening teenager! How terrifying his power was! He was able to penetrate Feng Wu's mind and take control of the flame. Little Phoenix wasn't Jun Linyuan's match at all and the flame disappeared completely in a matter of seconds. My abnormal flame! Little Phoenix was really in tears now. It had no idea why life was so hard. It was supposed to have that first abnormal flame after the volcano erupted, but Feng Tutu and Jun Rex ended up taking it. Then, it had managed to gather enough pieces to put together this abnormal flame, but somehow, it was sabotaged again. Thud! Little Phoenix passed out from all the grievances. Jun Linyuan looked surprised when he took the fire poison out. Wasn't that flame his own fire energy? How come it was in Feng Wu's head? He didn't think much of it, but only needed the string into a ball. The fire poison is eradicated and the young lady should wake up in 2 hours. Master Chu wiped the sweat off his forehead and heaved a sigh of relief. He felt as if he had just narrowly escaped death. Jun Linyuan darted one last look at him before turning to leave, carrying Feng Wu in his arms. Master Chu and the others were all so relieved to see him leave. However, right at that moment, "Brother!" a sweet voice rang out and third princess walked into the room. Smiling brightly, she kept her gaze on Feng Wu. "Brother, why are you here in the Bureau of Physicians? Who is this young lady? Do I know her?" "Why?" Jun Linyuan didn't even look at her. Still holding Feng Wu, he walked out of the bureau and disappeared out of sight in no time. The princess, the most favored daughter of the emperor, had been completely ignored. That was Jun Linyuan's most honest response. The princess's face turned livid, and she felt utterly humiliated. "What are you all looking at?" Infuriated, the princess vented on the physicians of the bureau. They were lambs around Jun Linyuan, but the princess was a different story. Especially Master Chu, who needed to vent his anger somewhere, and the princess seemed the perfect target. Chapter 338. How can he do that? Chapter 338. How can he do that? Master Chu smirked. "Very impressive, Your Royal Highness. I see that ma'am won't need our assistance from now on." Master Chu spoke in a taunting voice. Physicians were quite prestigious figures in court, and even as the favorite daughter of the emperor, the princess wouldn't be able to justify her attitude if the emperor asked about this incident. Master Chu wasn't the only one. The rest of the physicians all threw dirty looks at the princess. Other people might be intimidated by her, but not the Bureau of Physicians. You people, how dare you talk to me like that?" Feeling aggrieved, the princess stomped her foot and ran away, crying. Master Bai spat on the floor. "Does she think she's the same as the crown prince?" Jun Linyuan had a hall of his own in the royal palace as well as an individual residence outside. The crown prince was supposed to live in the palace and not move out like the other princes even if he was old enough. However, the name Jun Linyuan meant that he wasn't going to be treated like everyone else. Others lived by the rules. As for him, well, rules didn't apply to him. Hence, the crown prince had a manor outside. And it was where he usually stayed. Feng Wu opened her eyes as soon as Jun Linyuan put her down on the bed. Actually, Feng Wu was woken up by Little Phoenix's cries. Poor little bird. It had been looking forward to this day, and when it finally happened, that little abnormal flame was recognized as fire poison and was removed. Just like that. Wah! Little Phoenix sat on the ground, kicked around, and cried at the top of its lungs in Feng Wu's mind. The sound was ear-splitting. It gave Feng Wu a headache, and she had a hard time focusing. "You're awake." Night had set in and the room was lit up by candles. In the dim light, Jun Linyuan's stunning face looked unbelievably attractive. Feng Wu stared at Jun Linyuan, confused. Her bright eyes looked almost glassy. For right now, Little Phoenix was venting its grievances in her head. Ah, how could he do that? How could he? Ah! Little Phoenix rolled around in frustration and curled into a ball. It pounded the floor as it cried. "I was so close to consuming it. So close. He then took it away from me. He took it. Ah!" Little Phoenix didn't try to keep its voice down at all. To Feng Wu, it was as loud as rumbling thunder. "What?" Feng Wu was genuinely baffled after she learned what had happened. They had removed it. After everything she had done, she had kissed Jun Linyuan for it. For Christ's sake, they had removed that abnormal flame from her mind. Feng Wu was wide awake and she bolted upright. Thud! Jun Linyuan was bending over when Feng Wu sat up and her smooth forehead smashed into Jun Linyuan's nose. Anyone else would have covered their nose and cried out in pain. However, Jun Linyuan acted as if nothing happened. Feng Wu, on the other hand, was disoriented from the impact and she could see stars. Seeing that Feng Wu was going to fall out of bed, Jun Linyuan steadied her. Feng Wu grabbed Jun Linyuan's hands and glared at him. Jun Linyuan, why did you have to do that? Jun Linyuan had zero idea what she was talking about. He stared at Feng Wu with unblinking eyes. Chapter 339, What Did I Do? Chapter 339, What Did I Do? Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan. Why did you do that to me? Do you know how much it cost me? And you just took it away like that. Jun Linyuan was anything but good-natured. Growing up, no one had ever dared snap at him. In other words, he had never been wronged. He didn't know what that felt like. The Crown Prince narrowed his eyes and stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu was even more exasperated by his silence. Speak. Why did you do it? Why me? Are you so proud of yourself for playing me like this? Are you happy now? Satisfied? Jun Linyuan had lived an indulgent life growing up. For as long as he could remember, even his own father, the Emperor, had never made him do anything against his will. He kept his brooding gaze on Feng Wu and said in a husky, warning voice, Feng Wu, you're pushing it. Feng Wu broke into angry laughter. Me? Pushing it? After everything you've done to me, I'm pushing it? Jun Linyuan, you're unbelievable. Do you think everyone has to obey everything you say and you can do whatever you like to everyone else? What did I do? Jun Linyuan glared at Feng Wu, his voice intimidating. You know perfectly well what you did after I fainted. Throwing Jun Linyuan's hands off, Feng Wu stormed off. After a few steps, she took a deep breath, turned around, and looked into Jun Linyuan's eyes. I don't ever want to see you again. You disgust me. Thud. Feng Wu slammed the door behind her. She then marched off furiously. Outside, a group of men stood in the corridor, and they were all astonished. Especially Chang San, the captain of the Crown Prince's guards, who was dumbfounded. He thought that his brain had stopped working. His Royal Highness had just been shouted at. Someone had shouted at him. And that person had slammed the Crown Prince's door. What was more frightening was that the person was able to leave the prince's residence alive. How incredible! Meanwhile, Jun Linyuan was seething with anger and a draft seemed to sweep through the manor. Everyone shivered. Jun Linyuan was furious. The door that Feng Wu had slammed shut exploded all of a sudden. Chang San felt as if his heart had been blasted into pieces as well. The Crown Prince seldom lost his temper, but when he did, it would make everyone shiver with fear. Mr. Feng, that's... Chang San tugged Feng's sleeve. Is His Royal Highness going to be all right? Given how reserved and taciturn Jun Linyuan was, he would sulk rather than give vent to his anger. Even if he had to lash out, he would find some remote corner to do it. And it was indeed a habit worth worrying about. Rubbing his forehead, Feng went up to his master in resignation. Your Royal Highness! Jun Linyuan glared at Feng and exploded. What did I do? I saved her. Feng nodded repeatedly. Yes. Yes, of course. If I hadn't taken her to the royal palace, and I let the fire poison take effect, she would be a retard now. Feng nodded repeatedly. Yes. Yes, of course. And she blamed me for it? That woman doesn't make any sense. Feng nodded repeatedly. Yes. Yes, of course. She said she doesn't ever want to see me again? Do I look like I want to see her? Feng nodded repeatedly. Yes. Yes, of course. Chang San was dumbfounded once more. No. No, this wasn't happening. Chapter 340, This Crown Prince. Chapter 340, This Crown Prince. The crown prince was supposed to watch the world fall apart without so much as turning a hair. What did His Majesty used to say about his son? The emperor had concluded that the crown prince would frown even if the emperor himself died in front of him. However, he was now acting like a grumpy kid. Yes, and he was complaining as well. That was something that had never happened before. Just when Chang San thought that hearing Jun Linyuan complaining was shocking enough. Thud! There was a loud thump. Chang San watched as his master kicked a table to pieces. OMG! Was he seeing things? What happened to their crown prince? He didn't act so childish or willfully even when he was 3 years old. But now, he was venting on a table? Chang San couldn't help but follow Miss Wu with his eyes. Feng came out soon. Taking Feng's arm, Chang San asked in amazement, "Mr. Feng, His Royal Highness is acting so strangely today." Feng darted a glance at him. "What are you getting at?" "Mr. Feng, here's what I think." Chang San offered his opinion. "Since His Royal Highness is so mad at Miss Wu, how about I cut her head off to cheer him up?" Instantly, Chang San's muscles stiffened and he felt as if his blood had curdled. Feng's indifferent gaze suddenly turned very solemn and intense. Staring at Chang San, he stressed each word with a voice that wasn't loud, but was terrifying. "You're welcome to try if you want to get yourself, your family and your entire clan killed." Feng left after that, leaving Chang San behind, transfixed. He kept replaying Feng's words in his head. In other words, if he killed Miss Wu, he would die together with his family and the whole clan? Feng Wu had no idea of what happened after she left. She was mad, really mad. After all her efforts, she had just been one step short of success. Jun Linyuan had robbed her of the abnormal flame she had painstakingly gathered and had given her that attitude of "I'm doing it for your own good." It couldn't be any more frustrating. Feng Wu was so furious that she still looked pissed when she jumped over the wall into her own yard. Granny Zhao was startled by the look on Feng Wu's face. "Miss, you heard as well." "What?" Feng Wu was bewildered. "Where's Mum?" Granny Zhao looked upset. "She's been crying since she heard the news and I was finally able to put her to sleep after she got exhausted." Feng Wu's heart sank. Something had happened. What's wrong? Did someone come this afternoon? Was it Lady Wang? Feng Wu drew out a chair and let Granny Zhao sit down. With a grim face, Granny Zhao told her about Feng Yanfeng's visit. "Your uncle said that we need to get you prepared. He'll find a chance to get you close to the crown prince so that you can offer yourself to him as a concubine." Feng Wu shook with anger. "How dare he? Miss Wu, where are you going?" Granny Zhao feared that Feng Wu would get told off if she went to Feng Yanfeng to argue with him. Feng Wu took a deep breath. "I'm going to take a walk." She wasn't going to shout at Feng Yanfeng, for she knew her sycophantic uncle too well. To him, his personal gain was more important than anything else. What she needed to figure out now was whether Feng Yanfeng had come up with this on his own or whether Jun Linyuan was behind it. Chapter 341 The Unaware Prey. Chapter 341 The Unaware Prey. Feng Wu smacked herself on the forehead as soon as she walked out. Xiaoqi. She had forgotten all about Xiaoqi. It had been 2 months since Jun Linyuan took him away, and she wondered how he was doing now. Angry and ashamed, Feng Wu turned in the direction of the Crown Prince's residence. She had just jumped onto a wall when she saw a carriage coming her way. She quickly made her way up a leafy Chinese parasol tree and took cover in the branches. It was well after dark, so no one would be able to make her out that way. The carriage stopped under the tree Feng Wu was hiding in and 2 slim figures came out. Under the dim moonlight, Feng Wu recognized them. Feng Lu and Yen Yen. Since when were they so close? They were holding hands when they came out and both were smiling. The friendly atmosphere between the two gave Feng Wu the creep. Hearing their conversation, Feng Wu frowned. Feng Lu smiled brightly. So, deal. Yen Yen reached out to her with a finger. Pinky swear. They exchanged looks and smiled wickedly at each other, as if they had reached some secret deal. Feng Lu said, I'll leave you here. You better go back before Feng Wu finds out you're here. She then gestured toward the yard. The first courtyard in that direction is Fallen Star Yard, where Feng Wu and her family now live. Yen Yan's smile widened. Fallen Star Yard? That's quite fitting. Was it made specifically for Feng Wu? Feng Lu grinned. A star falling to the dirt. That's very suitable and very satisfying. Yen Yen raised her chin. We've come up with this plan right outside her wall. Imagine how frustrated she'll be if she finds out about this later. Both girls laughed wholeheartedly when they imagined how helpless Feng Wu would be when she walked into the trap. I'm going in, then. Yen Yen waved at Feng Lu. Feng Lu said, see you tomorrow. After Yen Yen left in her carriage, Feng Lu grinned maliciously in Yen Yan's direction. After that, she darted a contemptuous look in the direction of Fallen Star Yard before jumping over the wall and disappearing into the night. Feng Wu didn't move even after Feng Lu was gone. She was replaying Feng Lu and Yen Yan's conversation in her head. Those two would never have expected Feng Wu to be right over their heads in a leafy tree when they chatted by the wall next to her courtyard. Feng Wu smiled. It seemed that tomorrow would be a very interesting day. She had to be ready for tomorrow, and it seemed that Xiaoqi would have to wait. Feng Wu darted a pitiful look in the direction of Jun Linyuan's residence. That man in the purple robe was a Yen. Little Phoenix couldn't see what was going on outside, but could hear them. Hence, it had also heard Feng Lu and Yen Yan's plan. Feng Wu said grumpily, so what? He has the thing you need. I'm telling you. Little Phoenix insisted. You have to reach the spiritual Grandmaster stage. Right now, Zhuoqingluan can finish you off with a flip of her hand. I've heard so many people speaking despicably about you, and as your mount, I'm so ashamed. Chapter 342, Malicious Intentions. Chapter 342, Malicious Intentions. Although you're not a spiritual Grandmaster yet, I can tell you something in advance, Little Phoenix said in excitement. Get in here. Quickly. Feng Wu had been intrigued this whole time about the method for waking up her master. Hence, she turned into her spiritual form and entered her ring the next moment. The first thing she saw was her beautiful master, who was still lying there with his eyes closed. Her beautiful master's layered robes hung over the edges of the ice bed like white clouds. His exquisite features were breathtaking. On his smooth, glowing forehead, a faint scar marked where the divine blood of the phoenix had been taken out. Little Phoenix said to Feng Wu, Look at that scar on my master's forehead. Does it look like a star to you? After taking a closer look, Feng Wu saw that the scar was indeed star-shaped. Do you want to bring him back? Little Phoenix asked. Of course. Feng Wu clenched her fist. It was her ultimate fixation. Good, Little Phoenix said. All you have to do is gather all 5 broken pieces of the star and insert them in that scar. That way my master can wake up. Feng Wu's eyes sparkled. That's all. That's all. Little Phoenix rolled its eyes at Feng Wu. Do you have any idea who the owners of those 5 pieces are? You make it sound so easy. It's harder than collecting real stars. Feng Wu was used to Little Phoenix's sarcasm already, and she only prompted, Who? Little Phoenix said proudly, You don't need to know the others. You won't be able to get them now anyway. It'll only get you killed quicker. I'm making progress, you know? Feng Wu protested. Little Phoenix snorted. Become a spiritual Grandmaster first, then we'll talk. Feng Wu was speechless. She wished that she could get to the spiritual Grandmaster stage more than anything else, but she had hit a bottleneck, which was so frustrating. Little Phoenix knew that it was making an impossible request as well. Feng Wu was already doing a great job by rising to a level 9 spiritual master from scratch in an unprecedented few months. No one on the entire continent had ever been able to do this. Feng Wu went back to their previous topic. Fine, don't tell me the rest, but what about the first piece? Are you suggesting that? Yes. Little Phoenix sounded thrilled. That first piece of the star is on that man in a purple robe, that Sir Yen your uncle was fawning over. Feng Wu nodded. That's Yen Shifan, a minister on the Grand Council, as well as the Ministry of Official Personnel. That's him. Little Phoenix grabbed Feng Wu's sleeve, the look in its eyes fervent. You have to get that first piece, and you better be quick about it. Quick. Little Phoenix nodded. The broken star pieces can thoroughly remold and change a person's body, improving their physical strength. How long do you think that Sir Yen will wait before he uses it on himself? Once he does that, your beautiful master will never wake up. Feng Wu clenched her fists. It was late, but instead of going back home, Feng Wu headed for the Yen Manor. No one but herself knew what she did there. The next day, Feng Wu heard familiar footsteps as soon as she woke up. It was Granny Gui. Granny Gui had been holding a grudge against Fallen Star Yard since the last time, but... Chapter 343 Your Uncle Cares About You. Chapter 343 Your Uncle Cares About You. But she had to force a smile. Is Miss Wu at home? Lady Wang is asking for her. Granny Zhao asked what it was about, and Granny Gui said, Sir Yan's mother is celebrating her 80th birthday today, and the ladies of all the major families are going to attend the banquet. Since Miss Wu is back, she can't hide in Fallen Star Yard forever, can she? Granny Zhao snapped, You. Granny Gui smiled. I always speak my mind, and I admit that I'm not the smoothest talker. But I'm telling the truth. Miss Wu can't hide behind closed doors forever, can she? She has to get married and have babies someday. Granny Zhao glowered. It's none of your business. Granny Gui shook her head and smiled wryly. She's not your Miss Wu alone, but a daughter of the Feng clan as well. If Miss Wu was a cultivator like all her sisters, we wouldn't be rushing her into marriage. But she's crippled. So, getting married is her only option now. Granny Zhao was so angry that she wanted to slap Granny Gui. Even Qiuling rushed out of the kitchen with a cleaver in her hand. Feng Wu had finished washing up by then, and she walked out wearing a long dress with buttons down the front and a light red robe. Standing there gracefully, she reminded one of spring sunshine and morning dew. Although Feng Wu didn't utter a word, Granny Gui couldn't help but shudder at Feng Wu's presence. How could this be? Granny Gui was shaken. Miss Wu was useless now, but how could she still be this intimidating? Especially those eyes, which made Granny Gui feel as if her heart had been pierced through with a sword. Let's go, Feng Wu said unhurriedly, looking as stunning as ever. Miss Wu. Qiuling and Granny Zhao each took one of Feng Wu's arms, and both shook their heads repeatedly. After everything Feng Wu had put her through, Lady Wang was never going to help Feng Wu get a good husband. Of course she was going to get the worst candidate possible. However, Feng Wu only smiled and left them some instructions. Shut the door after I leave and look after my mother. Granny Zhao and Qiuling saw the light suddenly, and they realized why Feng Wu was so calm. After that, they turned in unison and gave Granny Gui inscrutable glances, which baffled the latter. Feng Wu followed Granny Gui to Flying Snow Building, and the latter managed to exchange some pleasantries with Feng Wu along the way, although her smile looked rather stiff. Feng Wu was on guard. She spotted Feng Lu as soon as she set foot inside Flying Snow Building. Feng Lu had dressed up for the occasion. She was bright-eyed and looked as pretty as a picture. Her lilac dress went all the way down to her ankles, the layers of which reminded one of floating clouds, and she wore a pair of embroidered shoes rimmed with golden thread. Feng Wu was secretly amazed. After what had happened, Feng Lu could act as if she was completely unaffected. Tough girl. Feng Lu returned Feng Wu's stare with a dirty look. She snorted and went back to her mother. Despite Lady Wang's hatred for Feng Wu, she was able to squeeze out a kind smile like a gracious aunt should. Xiao Wu, there you are. Come, I've prepared an outfit for you. Feng Wu took a glance at the pale green dress and shook her head. That won't be necessary. Lady Wang smiled as she took Feng Wu's arm. Xiao Wu, your uncle left me with instructions that we should show you around more. He also asked me to make some new clothes for you. Your uncle really cares about you. Chapter 344. Pardon? What was that? Chapter 344. Pardon? What was that? Her uncle cared about her? Feng Wu felt like cracking up. To irritate Lady Wang, Feng Wu played along and nodded. I know, uncle is great to me. He's going to make me the crown princess. Feng Wu knew that those words would make Lady Wang try her best to stop her uncle from doing that. She knew it. Lady Wang's face stiffened right away and the smile disappeared. However, it only took her a second to pull herself together. As always, Feng Lu was the one unable to control herself. Feng Wu, you're shameless. Offering yourself to the crown prince? Who the hell do you think you are? His Royal Highness will never agree. You're bold as brass. Feng Lu. Lady Wang scolded her and gave her a warning look. Only then did Feng Lu realize what she had done. How could she have forgotten about her important plan? After today, Feng Wu would be… well, that was if Feng Wu would live to see another day. Feng Lu snickered, darted a contemptuous look at Feng Wu, and turned away. Feng Wu went on with her excellent acting. Looking at Lady Wang, she smiled bitterly. If Xiao Lu really doesn't like it, I won't go to the Yen Manor then. Lady Wang and Feng Lu exchanged looks and said in unison, You have to go. Feng Wu hesitated. But I have a headache. Lady Wang went up to her in a hurry and helped her sit down. Granny Gui, give Xiao Wu a head massage. And my hands hurt. Feng Wu made another request. I'll rub them for you. Lady Wang was burning with hatred, but she forced herself to smile. And my feet hurt too, Feng Wu said in a pitiful voice. Feng Wu, you're pushing it. Feng Wu didn't put any effort into making her acting convincing, which only agitated the others further. Everyone knew that Feng Wu was pretending, but if she really decided not to go, there was nothing they could do about it. Feng Wu was the key to their plot today, and without her, they would come away empty-handed. Feng Lu, apologize to your sister. Lady Wang gave Feng Lu a warning look. Feng Lu was furious. However, at the thought of their plan, she had no choice but to clench her fists and say, Sister Wu, I'm sorry. What was that? I didn't catch that. Feng Wu looked bewildered. Miss Wu, I'm sorry. Feng Lu glared at Feng Wu. Pardon? The wind was blowing so hard. I didn't hear you. Forget it. Stay at home. Feng Lu stormed off. Feng Wu frowned at Lady Wang. My feet hurt so bad. Aunt, I don't think I can go today. Sorry for wasting your time. Shaking with anger, Feng Lu turned around and stomped back. She knelt down in front of Feng Wu and took the latter's leg. Where does it hurt? Here? Or here? Feng Lu pressed so hard that anyone would jump up in pain. Ouch! Feng Wu reacted exactly that way. Her leg flexed and she kicked Feng Lu in the face. There was a loud thud, which almost sent Feng Lu flying backward. However, Feng Wu was the one who looked hurt. Feng Lu, did you have to press that hard? Do you hate me that much? Feng Wu had aimed her foot exactly at the tip of Feng Lu's delicate nose. It was one of the softest parts of the body, and Feng Wu spared no effort. Feng Lu broke into tears right away. Xiao Lu. Lady Wang forgot all about Feng Wu and ran to her daughter. Chapter 345. Feng Wu is her natural enemy. Chapter 345. Feng Wu is her natural enemy. Lady Wang ran up to Feng Lu in a hurry. Xiao Lu, are you alright? Talk to me. Tears rolled down Feng Lu's cheeks as blood gushed out of her nose. Her eyes glinted like a hungry wolf's, and she looked like she was ready to tear Feng Wu's throat open. Feng Wu, you be! However, blood rushed into her mouth as soon as Feng Lu opened it, and the taste almost made her puke. Feng Wu looked as innocent as a bunny. Oh God, what happened? Xiao Lu, I didn't mean to, but you squeezed my foot too hard and I flinched before I knew it. Xiao Lu, are you alright? Let me have a look. There's so much blood. Luckily, I'm a doctor. Here, let me help you. After those words, Feng Wu grabbed a handful of ashes from a censer nearby, made her way to Feng Lu's side, and smacked the handful right onto Feng Lu's pretty face. Feng Lu had just opened her mouth to speak and the ashes fell right in. Wretch! Poor Feng Lu. Her face was streaked with tears, blood was gushing out of her nose, and she was repulsed by the ashes. It couldn't be any worse. Lady Wang realized what was going on right away and she glared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu, what are you doing? Feng Wu looked very innocent. I was helping Xiao Lu. She was bleeding so bad. See? Her nosebleed has stopped. Lady Wang then saw that Feng Wu was telling the truth. However, Feng Lu's makeup had all been ruined and she looked a mess. What infuriated Lady Wang even more was that Feng Lu's dress had been specially designed for today's event, and it was the key to their plan. My lady, we're running late. Seeing that Lady Wang was going to waste her time arguing with Feng Wu, Granny Gui hurriedly gave her mistress a reminder. Lady Wang closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She wished more than anything that she could rip Feng Wu's face off. However, she had no choice but to force a smile at the latter. Xiao Wu, thank you. Feng Wu said matter-of-factly, you're welcome. We're all trying to help Xiao Lu here. Lady Wang almost choked on her own spit. This Feng Wu was her natural enemy. To calm herself down, Lady Wang turned to Feng Lu with a scowl. Come inside with me and clean yourself up. One couldn't help but wonder what instructions Lady Wang would give Feng Lu as she cleaned her daughter up. However, Feng Wu couldn't care less. She only looked around casually, savoring the view of Lady Wang's room. Servants came in to clean up the mess, while Granny Gui kept her eyes on Feng Wu, fearing that the latter would try some new trick. Feng Wu smiled a little. Lady Wang and Feng Lu were in this scheme against her together, and she was only getting her revenge in advance, while making their plan more difficult. Before long, Feng Lu came out in a pink outfit. It was a lovely dress, but the redness on the tip of her nose made her look like she had been crying, which might not seem that auspicious for a birthday party. Lady Wang frowned. Xiao Lu, how about you stay at home? No. Of course Feng Lu wouldn't agree to that. She was the one who had come up with the plan and she had made sure that everything was set up just the way she liked it. She couldn't give up now because of this petty incident. She had to see Feng Wu's downfall with her own eyes. My lady, it's about time, Granny Gui reminded her. Lady Wang had her own mission to accomplish at tonight's banquet. Feng Yanfeng was longing for this transfer to the Ministry of Official Personnel, and after some painstaking effort, he had finally been able to make Sir Yan's acquaintance. Hence, for the old lady's birthday dinner party. Chapter 346, Visiting the Yen Manor. Chapter 346, Visiting the Yen Manor. Feng Yanfeng had enjoined Lady Wang repeatedly, telling her to fawn over the Yen family as best as she could. Lady Wang smiled. She wouldn't fail her husband. They headed for the Yen Manor in a carriage. Lady Wang and Feng Lu sat on one side and Feng Wu sat on the other. Feng Wu was the fifth daughter in the clan, which meant that she had 4 elder sisters. Bored by the uneventful ride, Feng Wu asked Feng Lu, who sat rigidly upright opposite her, "Where's my third sister? I haven't seen her since I got back." Her eldest and second sisters were Lady Wang's daughters, both of whom had gotten married. Her third sister, on the other hand, was still single. "Feng Wu, You should consider yourself lucky that my third sister is absent. Feng Lu smirked. Don't worry. You'll see how capable she is when she gets back from Imperial College. Feng Wu replied with a half-smile, Why aren't you in Imperial College yet? That successfully silenced Feng Lu. The cultivation education system in the Junwu Empire consisted of junior, intermediate, and advanced schools. One would only be admitted to the junior school after they became a level 3 spiritual master, and would graduate when they reached level 6. The intermediate school was open to those who had reached level 5, and the students graduated at level 9. Only those who had reached the spiritual grandmaster stage could apply to the advanced school. Feng Lu was a level 6 spiritual master at the moment, which meant that she had just reached the standard for the intermediate school, and was way below the entry level for Imperial College, the advanced school. Feng Lu glared at Feng Wu. At least I'm in the intermediate school. Feng Wu, you're useless and you can't even get into the junior one. No, you're too useless to even get into a nursery school. You're only humiliating yourself by bringing it up. Feng Wu darted a look at Lady Wang. As expected, the lady kept her eyes closed, as if she was sleeping, but in fact, she was giving Feng Lu tacit consent for her words. Feng Wu smiled. I'll be in Imperial College soon. Ha 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 ha. Feng Lu laughed, as if she had heard the funniest joke. She laughed until she was in tears. You? Get into Imperial College? You're not even a level 1 spiritual master. Are you going to ignore all college regulations? Feng Wu shrugged. You'll see. Feng Lu kept her unblinking gaze on Feng Wu, as if she was going to bore into Feng Wu's flesh with her eyes. Despite her arrogant laughter, she had never forgotten how brilliant Feng Wu had been. Could she really get into Imperial College? The carriage stopped as they spoke. Granny Gui's voice came from outside. My lady, we're at the Yen Manor. As one of the most influential officials at court, Sir Yan's banquet had attracted a great number of guests. Needless to say, Lady Wang wasn't important enough for Mrs. Yen to greet in person. A maid welcomed Lady Wang at the gate before showing them the way to the banquet. The venue was quite spacious. The male guests were entertained on the left and the ladies on the right. The two areas were only separated by a hedge. There had been influential officials from the Feng clan before, and it had been one of the 9 major clans. However, its status had continued to fall after it was no longer among the 9. It had never been this inconsequential. As a result, Lady Wang was seated at quite a remote table. Seeing her seat and the ladies around her, Lady Wang frowned. She was too far away from the center to even talk to Mrs. Yen. Feng Wu looked up and saw Mrs. Yen sitting at the host table in the center. Among the ladies sitting with her, there was a face that Feng Wu recognized. Chapter 347: The Possible Marriage Between the Royal and Zhou Families. Chapter 347: The Possible Marriage Between the Royal and Zhou Families. Mrs. Yen is back? That was quicker than I thought. Feng Wu remembered that Mrs. Yen had taken Mrs. Ning back to Anyuan City to seek justice for the latter. Feng Wu's murmur attracted the attention of the others. There were 6 seats around the round table Feng Wu was at. Lady Wang, Feng Lu, and Feng Wu took 3 seats, and 3 other ladies sat on the other 3. They were a mother with her 2 teenage daughters. Mrs. Feng, is this one of your girls? She's so lovely. Is she engaged yet? The longer Mrs. Ma looked at Feng Wu, the more beautiful she found Feng Wu. It would be wonderful to have such a daughter-in-law. Hence, Mrs. Ma asked. Before Lady Wang could reply, Feng Lu said with a smile, Mrs. Ma, this is my 5th sister, Feng Wu. She made sure that she enunciated Feng Wu's name. Mrs. Ma found the name familiar, but failed to put her finger on it. Feng Wu. Feng Wu. Feng Lu was about to remind her when the older Miss Ma took her mother's hand and whispered something in her ear. Mrs. Ma looked embarrassed right away. Lady Wang only appeared to hear the question then, and gave Mrs. Ma a benign smile. This is Xiao Wu, the daughter of the second branch of our clan. She's not engaged yet. Mrs. Ma. Mrs. Ma's younger daughter said arrogantly, Mrs. Feng, you've left something out. Miss Wu isn't not engaged. Her engagement was annulled. All the ladies here were ready for some gossip. Hearing the noise, all eyes began to turn in their direction. Mrs. Ma gave her younger daughter an embarrassed smile. Well, that was. I'm just asking. Lady Wang seemed to not detect her embarrassment at all, and she prompted, Mrs. Ma, I recall that you have an 18-year-old son. The younger Miss Ma glared at Lady Wang. Mrs. Feng, our family isn't interested in a woman with an annulled engagement, and my brother will never marry someone like that. Please stop asking. Lady Wang darted a sorry look at Feng Wu and heaved a sigh. Feng Wu watched as Lady Wang gave her award-winning performance, and she could detect more and more eyes on her. And she could hear people talking about her in subdued voices. So, that's Feng Wu. Back then, she was the genius second to the crown prince only. I heard she got greedy with her cultivation and ruined herself. And the royal family cancelled the engagement. That was quite a snobbish thing to do. No, it wasn't. The crown prince is like a deity. Would you be able to stand it if he married a cripple? Of course not. Wait, wasn't there another girl as talented as Feng Wu back then? Zhuo Qingyun of the Zhuo family? She's Zhuo Qingluan now. The real owner of the true phoenix blood. I heard that Zhuo Qingluan has reached the peak of the spiritual grandmaster stage. You need to update your database. She's not a spiritual grandmaster anymore, but a spiritual elder. Holy crap. That's so scary. She's only 15, isn't she? That's right. And only a genius like her is good enough for the crown prince. Word on the street is that the royal family is considering a marriage proposal to the Zhuo family. Chapter 348 The Proud Crown Prince. Chapter 348 The Proud Crown Prince. So, Zhuo Qingluan is going to be the crown prince's wife and our future empress. Feng Wu listened as the others went on murmuring. Feng Lu looked at Feng Wu, gloating at the latter's predicament. She would like to see how much longer Feng Wu could keep her composure under all those stares. However, to Feng Lu's surprise, Feng Wu looked as undisturbed as ever, as if those people weren't talking about her at all. Ladies at another table heard the talk as well. You flatter me. My Xiaoluan isn't like that at all. She's only just become a spiritual elder. Zhuo Qingluan's mother, Lady Tao, who was from the Tao clan of Riyang, waved her hand in a modest manner. A spiritual elder? That's amazing! We can't even imagine ever reaching that level. The other ingratiating voices chimed in. Another person asked, So, is the royal engagement proposal really happening? Lady Tao shook her head. No, it's nothing like that. Granny Qi, the Empress Dowager's maid, paid us a visit, that was all. Granny Qi? That's the Empress Dowager's most trusted servant. One word from her is more convincing than a lengthy speech from anyone else. Granny Qi would never visit the Zhuo manor for no reason. I'm sure it was on the Empress Dowager's command. The Zhuo family is really going to have a true phoenix. The flattery went on and on. Lady Tao kept waving her hands in denial, but she couldn't keep the gloating smile off her face. The Crown Prince's residence. Jun Linyuan had two residences, one in the royal palace and the one outside. He usually stayed in the one outside. Xian Yi paid him a visit today. Feng Sun didn't come with Xian Yi, which was quite rare, so Jun Linyuan asked about it in passing. Xian Yi said, Sir Yan's mother is celebrating her 80th birthday today, and Feng Sun is a relative, so his mother ordered him to attend. I don't think he'll come hunting with us today. Xian Yi realized that Jun Linyuan wasn't listening. The crown prince, who had always been focused, was playing with a shiny golden bead in his hand, and his mind had wandered off. This wasn't right at all. Xian Yi frowned. Where did that bead come from? He reached out as he spoke. Usually, Jun Linyuan would hand it to him in passing, regardless of how valuable the object was. However, Jun Linyuan closed his fingers around the bead, looked up, and raised his eyebrows. Where's Feng Sun? Xian Yi's mouth fell open. He's visiting the Yen family. Sir Yen is holding a birthday banquet. Do you want to go? Xian Yi asked. Jun Linyuan gave Xian Yi an "Are you an idiot" look. Since when would he bother going to a birthday banquet? By the way, I ran into the Feng clan's carriage on my way here. Lady Wang was taking Feng Lu to the banquet, and when the breeze lifted the curtain, I saw Feng Wu inside too, Xian Yi said attentively. He kept his unblinking gaze on Jun Linyuan as he spoke, not wanting to miss anything. Jun Linyuan frowned a little and tightened his grip on the golden bead. Birthday banquet at the Yen Manor? Jun Linyuan darted a glance at Feng. Feng took the hint right away and nodded. Sir Yen sent an invitation, but everyone knows that such an event is too petty for your Royal Highness to attend, and the invitation was just out of politeness. Jun Linyuan didn't say anything. Chapter 349 Clamor. Chapter 349 Clamor. Your Royal Highness, are you going to the Yen Manor? Feng gave Jun Linyuan a knowing look. Jun Linyuan narrowed his eyes, clenched his fists, and darted an arrogant look at Feng. Why, I can't? The Yen Manor would never be given such an honor if it wasn't for that girl. Of course you can. Would you like a plain carriage or? Feng asked attentively. Jun Linyuan darted another arrogant look at Feng. It's been a while since I last used my guards of honor, and you guys are out of practice. It's time to put them to use now. Feng was speechless. The Yen Manor. Feng Wu sat at her table, surrounded by all the murmurs and smirks. Some stared at her openly, while others stole glances at her. Some were curious and some jeered. There was both sympathy and contempt. However, Feng Wu, the center of attention, kept her gaze on her chopsticks and enjoyed her meal, as if all the clamor had nothing to do with her. Feng Lu was here to laugh at Feng Wu, and she wasn't satisfied by Feng Wu's calm at all. Sister Wu, don't be sad. We're all here for you. Feng Lu took Feng Wu's hands and said in a clear voice. Sister Wu, you can stop pretending. It breaks my heart to see you force yourself like this. So, the others saw the light suddenly. They had thought that Feng Wu was really that tough. As it turned out, she was only acting. That girl is so fake. I thought that she was shameless. So, she's only pretending. I would have run away in tears if I were her. How can she just sit there? The Zhou family sat at a table that was much closer to the front, and many ladies had surrounded them. Lady Qian, one of the bolder ones, asked, Mrs. Zhou, what do you think of the fifth daughter of the Feng clan? Mrs. Zhou asked in bewilderment, the fifth daughter? Who's that? Ignoring Feng Wu was the most insulting reply. The others around the table chuckled and Lady Qian went on. Mrs. Zhou, I was talking about Miss Feng Wu, the girl who was once engaged to the crown prince. Mrs. Zhou didn't even raise an eyebrow. Her? Didn't she ruin her own cultivation? Lady Qian said, that's what everyone says. But after all, she used to be as famous as your daughter once, and they were called the two genius girls of the imperial capital back then. Their table was some distance away from Feng Wu's, but the hall was rather quiet and everyone heard it. Mrs. Zhou smiled. That's why we should never be too greedy. My Xiao Luan knew from the very beginning that you can't rush your cultivation. Zhou Qingyu said proudly, my sister is a spiritual elder now, and she'll only get better. As for a certain someone, she's long fallen in the dirt and she should stay there. But no, she just has to walk around, taking advantage of my sister's fame. Shame on her. Xiao Yu. Mrs. Zhou cast a stern look at Zhou Qingyu and feigned a vexed tone. Watch your language. I'm telling the truth, Zhou Qingyu said indignantly. Even I'm in Imperial College now, but she… Haha, even compared with me, she's nothing. How dare she mention her old fame? If she has any sense of shame, she should have killed herself back then. She's an insult to us all. Chapter 350 Young Lord Feng, the Savior. Chapter 350 Young Lord Feng, the Savior. Zhou Qingyu raised her voice deliberately, making sure that Feng Wu could hear it. Anyone who genuinely cared about Feng Wu would have jumped to their feet by now. However, Lady Wang and Feng Lu only exchanged satisfied looks at the insult. Feng Wu clenched her fist. No one with any sense of self-respect would turn a deaf ear to such humiliating words. However, Feng Wu knew better than anyone that she couldn't do anything reckless. A level 9 spiritual master was something in northern border city, but here in the imperial capital, she still wasn't strong enough. Feng Wu wasn't going to take it lying down, though. She was going to rise to her feet when… Little Feng Wu! A familiar voice rang out. It was a melodious male voice. And Feng Wu wasn't the only one who heard it. Everyone turned in that direction. A teenager sat on the hedge to their right, beaming at Feng Wu. Bright light shone behind him, giving his smile a blurry effect and making it all the more stunning. One couldn't help but cheer up at the uplifting air the teenager gave off. Feng Sun! Everyone cried out in surprise. Feng Sun, the young Lord Feng, was infamous in the imperial capital for his unruly behavior. As the only son of the northern Feng general, his mother doted on him, which had resulted in his current personality. He could behave like the most spoiled young lord. It was common knowledge that Feng Sun obeyed one person only, the crown prince. The eyes of many ladies lit up at the sight of Feng Sun. Not only was Feng Sun handsome, he also had a superior status. In the list of ideal husbands in the imperial capital, he was second only to Jun Linyuan. Little Feng Wu. Feng Sun hopped off the hedge, ran up to Feng Wu, and rubbed her hair in an affectionate manner. His warm smile reminded one of the pleasant spring sunlight. Where are you looking? I'm right here. The smiles froze on many of the young ladies' faces. Were Feng Sun and Feng Wu very close? Feng Wu threw a dirty look at him. Your hand. What? Feng Sun was bewildered. Off me. Feng Wu hated when other people touched her head. It was bad luck. Sure. Seeing Feng Wu's frown, Feng Sun obeyed right away. He patted her on the shoulder instead and smiled broadly. You're here for the banquet as well? Gosh, isn't it so boring? Come, I'll show you around. Feng Wu then stepped on his foot. Feng Sun cried out and accused Feng Wu with an exaggerated expression. Hey! Little Feng Wu! You stepped on my foot! Hit her! Now! Zhou Qingyu clenched her fists and stared at Feng Wu in hatred, wishing that she could pierce Feng Wu with her gaze. Zhou Qingyu had been secretly in love with Feng Sun for a very long time, and she couldn't get over her infatuation. She had hinted to her mother on multiple occasions to propose her marriage into the Feng family. Never had she expected that Feng Wu would be so familiar with Feng Sun. She grit her teeth so hard out of jealousy that her molars almost broke. However, Feng Wu overpowered Feng Sun with her smirk. Get back to wherever you came from. Now. Feng Sun darted a look at Feng Wu, then whispered in her ear, Aren't you angry about all these people saying such things about you? How about I get revenge for you? All human beings were emotional animals. After everything Feng Sun had done for her, Feng Wu would be lying if she said she wasn't touched. It was just that. That won't be necessary. Feng Wu turned him down casually. Chapter 351 Traps. Chapter 351 Trap. Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu. Are you sure? Yes, Feng Wu said. I have my own plan. All right. I'm right next door. Call me if you need me. Feng Sun rubbed Feng Wu's head. She had some fluffy hair on her temples which looked very adorable, especially when she puffed out her cheeks and glared at him like she was doing now. It was so cute, ha ha. Hands off. Feng Sun dashed off before Feng Wu could glare at him, laughing all the way back. Feng Sun left as abruptly as he had arrived, like a tornado. However, the guests remained astonished. Is Feng Wu that familiar with young Lord Feng? Lady Qian was the first to speak. I didn't know that. Mrs. Wa's face darkened a little. Next to her, Mrs. Zhao said, everyone knows that young Lord Feng is His Royal Highness's good friend. If Feng Wu is on such good terms with young Lord Feng, can it be that His Royal Highness is also quite familiar with her? Mrs. Wa's face was livid. No, it's not like that. Yen Yen showed up out of nowhere and protested loudly. Feng Wu just wouldn't leave my cousin and His Royal Highness alone. She's so annoying. What? Everyone was shocked by the statement. It's true. Yen Yen raised both hands. We came back to the imperial capital together, and there was this one night. I saw with my own eyes Feng Wu sneaking into His Royal Highness's bedroom. Too bad for her. His Royal Highness didn't like it at all. He told Feng Wu to get the H. She was slandering Feng Wu right in front of her. And Feng Wu would never stand for such a thing. Smack! She slapped Yen Yen hard on the cheek. Everyone was astonished. Feng Wu did it. No one knew how she did it. All they saw was a figure in a pale red dress sweeping by, and the next thing they knew, Yen Yen was standing there dazed, holding her swollen cheek. Yen Yen wasn't the only one dumbfounded. The entire hall was as baffled as she was. This was the Yen Manor. Feng Wu, the crippled girl whose name was in the mud, had just slapped Yen Yen in front of everyone. She might as well have slapped every one of the Yen family. Lady Wang was the first to realize what had happened. She hadn't expected that Feng Wu could move so fast, let alone that she could be so bold. For a moment, she didn't know what to do, for she realized that things were beyond her control. Feng Yanfeng's instructions resonated in her head. He had told her to fawn over Mrs. Yen as best as she could and to give the latter the gift they had prepared when no one was looking, so that he could get that transfer to the Ministry of Official Personnel. But now, Feng Wu had just slapped Yen Yen in public. That Feng Wu, everyone stared with their mouths agape. Only then did Yen Yen come back to her senses, and her eyes went bloodshot red. Feng Wu, you hit me. How dare you hit me in my place? I'm gonna kill you. Yen Yen flipped her sleeve, and a sharp dagger appeared in her hand. Everyone blanched at the sight of that glinting blade. She meant it. Infuriated, Yen Yen brandished the dagger at Feng Wu's face. I'm gonna rip your face off before I kill you. Feng Wu shifted sideways, evading Yen Yen. Meanwhile, she lifted her foot a little and tripped Yen Yen. Ah! Missing Feng Wu and losing her footing, Yen Yen fell head first toward a table. And a pot of steaming hot pigeon soup had just been served on that table. Yen Yan's face fell right into that pot and she sucked in her breath at the pain. Chapter 352, Awesome. Chapter 352, Awesome. Miss Yen. And that table was the one Mrs. Zhua and Mrs. Qian were sitting at. Both ladies tried to stop Yen Yen from falling, but they were too late. Yen Yan's entire head was in the soup pot and her hair was soaked with grease. When she was helped to her feet, she had a pigeon wing sticking out of her hair, which looked rather funny. Ah! Yen Yen screamed frantically. She threw Mrs. Zhua's hands off and charged at Feng Wu, still holding the dagger. Stop it! A stern voice ran out. Mrs. Yen had come out with her elderly mother-in-law. The old lady, in whose name the banquet was being held, wore a birthday outfit decorated with dark golden thread. Her silver hair was neatly combed, giving her a stern and dignified look. Mrs. Yen looked equally stern and she glared at Yen Yen. Stop right there! Yen Yen had always been terrified of her mother and she cried out furiously, "She hit me and pushed me into a pot of soup. Mother, I won't have it." Feng Wu smirked. "Are you saying that you can slander me all you want and I can't do anything about it? Why should I stand it when you can't?" Seeing Mrs. Yen, the other ladies eyed Feng Wu with sympathy. Mrs. Yen always took the side of her own people, and she doted on Yen Yen. Feng Wu was unbelievably bold to strike Yen Yen first, she was so dead. The old ladies and Mrs. Yan's faces were livid. Mrs. Yen knew Yen Yen too well. When she saw what was going on, there was no doubt in her mind that Yen Yen had provoked Feng Wu first. Hence, she glowered at Yen Yen and said harshly, "You're too old to say such capricious things. Are you a child? Go clean yourself up." But, now, Mrs. Yen was very intimidating when she straightened her face. Yen Yen would have stormed off on any other day, but now, she only stood there stubbornly with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Yen, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." Only then did Lady Wang and Feng Lu arrive at the table, and both apologized repeatedly to Mrs. Yen. It was all Feng Wu's fault. No matter what Miss Yen said, she shouldn't have hit her. This girl is really... Mrs. Yen, feel free to punish her as you see fit. After apologizing to Mrs. Yen, Lady Wang turned to scold Feng Wu. "Have you forgotten what I told you before we left home? I told you to be demure and obedient. You're not what you used to be. Without any cultivation, how can you still be this proud? Get down on your knees and apologize to Miss Yen and Mrs. Yen now." Mrs. Yen had mixed feelings toward Feng Wu. She had disliked Feng Wu at first, but then, she couldn't deny her appreciation for Feng Wu anymore. There was even a time when she had wanted Feng Wu to treat her. "We can't afford the apology of the superior Feng family." The old lady was relentless with her words as she glared at them. "I see that the Feng clan is too prestigious for our Yen family to befriend. Mrs. Feng, please take your daughters and leave." Everyone said a slight prayer for Feng Wu. The old lady was banishing her in front of everyone. How was the Feng clan ever going to establish themselves in society again? And what about Feng Wu? Feng Wu, however, smirked. "I see that the elderly Mrs. Yen has such strict domestic discipline. Is that why Miss Yen knows how to come up with the most groundless slander? She's so good at framing other people, ruining their reputation, and spreading rumors. Is that all the result of your teaching? Awesome." Chapter 353 Aggrieved. Chapter 353 Aggrieved. The others thought that Feng Wu would burst into tears and run away in grievance. But no one had expected Feng Wu to be bold enough to talk back to the old lady. The old Mrs. Yen was a tough, stern, and proud lady, and no one of her generation had ever dared offend her. But Feng Wu had just challenged her outright. Was she really a 13-year-old good-for-nothing? In the area for male guests on the other side, Feng Sun gloated. "See? What did I tell you? Xiao Wu is awesome. Just listen to her. Even the old lady isn't her match, not to mention Yen Yen." Feng Sun sat with all his buddies from the imperial capital. Everyone looked at him in resignation. "Brother Feng III, isn't Yen Yen your cousin and the old lady your own relative? Why does it sound like you're on Feng Wu's side?" Feng Sun darted the person a glance. "Shui IV, don't tell me you're one of those who values family loyalty over reason." Shui IV, the one he spoke to, was the fourth son of Minister Shui and one of Feng Sun's buddies, whom he usually hung out with. Shui was baffled. Wasn't Brother Feng the one who emphasized standing up for friends and valuing family above all else? Why was it the other way round now that Feng Wu was involved? The others all stared at Feng Sun in bewilderment, not sure what to make of his attitude. At that moment, Sir Yen, who was in the host's seat, rose to his feet with a frown and had the servants remove the hedge between the two areas. That way they were able to see what was going on the other side. He then went over to his wife with a frown. What's wrong? Before Mrs. Yen could say anything, the old lady exploded. She had never expected Feng Wu to be bold enough to talk back. She wouldn't have it. Kick her out. Now. Now! Infuriated, the old lady thumped her walking stick loudly on the floor. Many were giving Feng Wu strange looks now. Sir Yen turned his cold gaze on Feng Wu. And who might this young lady be? She's Feng Wu, the fifth daughter of the Feng clan, and the one that destroyed her own cultivation because of her greed. Mrs. was smirked in a condescending manner. I knew that she was arrogant, but I finally see how arrogant she can actually be. She slapped Miss Yen first, then offended the old lady. Such an ill-bred girl. Mrs. Yen frowned. It's not like that. It was Yen Yan's fault today. Did you just take that girl's side? The old lady almost stuck her walking stick in Mrs. Yan's face. Have you forgotten that Yen Yen is your daughter? Why are you speaking up for that girl? What kind of mother are you? Mother, don't be mad. It's not good for your health. A pregnant woman who spoke in a gentle voice cajoled the old lady. She had one hand behind her waist and the other over her plump belly. It was none other than Lady Tang, Sir Yan's favorite concubine. She then turned to Feng Wu. Miss Feng, my mother isn't in great health, and we can't have her losing her temper. Please apologize to her. She's such a kind lady that she'll forgive you as soon as you say you're sorry. However, no one noticed how grim Yen Yan's face was when she stared at Lady Tang. Lady Tang was the old lady's brother's daughter, and the old lady had offered this concubine to Sir Yen herself. Somehow, after so many years, Lady Tang was still one of Sir Yan's favorites. Yen Yen had overheard a conversation once. Her father had promised Lady Tang that he would make her his second official wife once she gave him a son. Chapter 354 Chaos. Chapter 354 Chaos. There was no way that Yen Yen would let Lady Tang give birth to this baby. Hence, she decided to make Feng Wu the culprit. According to her plan, she would set Feng Wu up, get rid of the baby, and kill Lady Tang during the process, making Feng Wu the one to take the blame. That would be killing 4 birds with 1 stone, and it couldn't be any more perfect. Yen Yan's eyes flickered and she nodded at someone behind Feng Wu. What happened next was quicker than words could describe. All of a sudden, someone pushed Feng Wu hard. It was a great momentum. Feng Wu hurtled forward. Great. Yen Yan's eyes glinted coldly. Feng Wu was going down and Yen Yen would get her ultimate revenge. Seeing that Feng Wu was flying at Lady Tang, everyone opened their eyes wide in astonishment. No! Watch out! The baby! Feng Wu grabbed Feng Lu when she fell forward. For Feng Lu was the one who had pushed her when no one was looking. The moment Feng Wu stumbled forward, she grabbed Feng Lu and threw the ladder in front of her. Poor Feng Lu. She flew out like a rag doll. And Feng Wu had thrown her in Yen Yan's direction. Seeing Feng Lu flying at her, Yen Yen raised her hands and tried to push Feng Lu away. However, Feng Lu was so flustered that she grabbed Yen Yan's hands and wouldn't let go. Feng Wu had almost knocked into Lady Tang, when she twisted her body at the last moment and missed the ladder. Crack! Everyone heard the sound of cracking bones. In order to dodge Lady Tang, Feng Wu fell to the ground and rolled away. Thud! She kicked Feng Lu and Yen Yen, who were grappling with each other, and both girls stumbled toward Lady Tang despite themselves. It was the worst day of Lady Tang's life. She had yet to recover from the fact that Feng Wu had nearly knocked into her, when Feng Lu and Yen Yen smashed into her together. Ah! Lady Tang wailed. Z'er! Sir Yen cried out and quickly ran toward Lady Tang. But it was too late. Lady Tang stumbled back until she lost her footing and fell backward. Xiao Zi! The old lady's hands reached out as she tried to stop Lady Tang from falling. However, she tripped and fell down herself before she could reach Lady Tang. Yen Yen and Feng Lu smashed into the old lady and Lady Tang together. Ah! All hell broke loose. Sir Yen was furious. He rushed over, picked up Yen Yen and Feng Lu with each hand, and tossed them aside. After that, he helped his mother to her feet. Lady Tang, on the other hand, was ghastly pale. Holding her plump belly, she was too weak to cry. What Sir Yen failed to notice was that Feng Wu had taken something from him when he walked past her. Little Phoenix's thrilled voice rang out in Feng Wu's head as soon as she grabbed that cold key. Yes, I recognize that energy. That's it. That's the key to that broken piece of the star. It's not the broken piece itself? Feng Wu looked down at the snowflake-shaped object in her hand and asked in surprise. Of course it's not. Little Phoenix flew around in circles in the ring. I didn't know that it would be so easy. Little Feng Wu, you know what? I know how to get you leveled up to the spiritual grandmaster stage if you can get that broken piece. Really? Really? Little Phoenix flapped its wings in excitement. Go find what that key opens now. That Sir Yen is so much more capable than you. The moment he realizes that key is gone, he'll go berserk. Chapter 355. What if it won't open? Chapter 355. What if it won't open? The hall was in utter chaos. Lady Tang was wailing, Yen Yen was defending herself, Feng Lu was trying to make excuses, and the old lady was scolding everyone. It was like a circus out there. And there wasn't a better moment for Feng Wu to sneak off. When no one was looking, Feng Wu hid behind a column before quickly hopping into a big tree. The next moment, she was nowhere to be seen. Actually, Feng Wu had had everything under control the whole time. It wasn't that she had figured out everything herself, but Yen Yen and Feng Lu had just happened to discuss their plan under a tree that Feng Wu had been hiding in. She had heard everything. Feng Wu learned that Feng Lu was going to persuade her to come to the Yen Manor, and that the latter would make Feng Wu a laughingstock during the banquet. She also learned that Feng Lu and Yen Yen were going to make her the scapegoat for Lady Tang's mishap. Feng Yanfeng would do anything to curry favor with Sir Yen. Just imagine what he would do to Feng Wu if he learned that Feng Wu had killed Sir Yan's favorite concubine and her baby. It was probably the cleverest plan Feng Lu and Yen Yen had ever managed to come up with. Unfortunately, Feng Wu had been right above their heads and had heard every word. Hence, Feng Wu had decided to twist their trick to her own use. Because she needed that key which Sir Yen kept in his sleeve all the time. Sir Yen was much more capable than Feng Wu, and he always had that key on him. Feng Wu wouldn't be able to steal it under normal circumstances, and she could only give it a go when he was greatly disturbed and was distracted. Hence, Feng Wu played along with Feng Lu and Yen Yen, entertaining them with their little trick. She finally got what she wanted when Sir Yen walked past her. The Yen Manor was a spacious one with 6 rows of houses, and each row had multiple courtyard levels. Airy pavilions and pagodas with rows of overhanging eaves stood in great numbers. Could be quite overwhelming. Luckily, Feng Wu had been here last night to explore the place, and she knew the layout of the Yen Manor by heart. Take a left turn here, then turn right after 500 meters. Walk for another 1,000 meters, then turn left. Little Phoenix could sense that broken star piece, and it guided Feng Wu toward it. Before long, Feng Wu reached a tower on an islet in the middle of a lake. It's right there in that tower! Little Phoenix was thrilled. The tower stood right in the center of Blue Lake. The water was limpid and the tower reminded one of an eagle spreading its wings. Nothing obscured the line of sight and the tower could be seen from all sides. Taking out the cold key, Feng Wu slid it into the slot. She needed to open the door as soon as possible. All would be lost if she was spotted. Inside was one of the broken star pieces to save her master, and she would give anything to obtain it. However, after sticking the key in, Feng Wu couldn't turn it no matter what. Something seemed to be stuck and it just wouldn't budge. Why was this happening? Was it the wrong key? Feng Wu was a little flustered, for there was no cover around and anyone passing by would be able to spot her right away. Moreover, Serene might figure out what was going on at any moment, and she would be in a lot of trouble if that happened. But the key just wouldn't turn. Meanwhile, Lady Tang had been taken inside for emergency treatment and the old lady was being treated for her leg, which had been injured in the fall. "How's Lady Tang doing?" Mrs. Yen was the most exasperated person here. Although she didn't like the fact that Lady Tang was having a baby. Chapter 356, Will Feng Wu be blamed? Chapter 356, Will Feng Wu be blamed? However, Mrs. Yen had allowed Lady Tang to carry that baby until now, which indicated that Mrs. Yen wanted it. After all, Yen was her only child, and the Yen family needed a son. At that thought, Mrs. Yen darted a harsh look at Yen, who was shivering in a corner. How could she have such a stupid daughter? Why didn't Yen realize why she had let Lady Tang carry the baby to full term? She would decide what to do with the concubine after the baby was born. Lady Tang could live if she gave birth to a girl. If she had a son, Mrs. Yen would get rid of the mother and keep the boy for herself. However, Yen had just ruined everything. Both Yen and Feng Lu were petrified. For everyone had seen that it was the two of them who had knocked over the old lady and Lady Tang. If anything happened, Yen was too frightened to look her father in the face. Master Bai was a guest at the banquet, and his services had been called on after the incident. The old lady's minor injury could wait, but Lady Tang. "How's Lady Tang?" Mrs. Yen asked with genuine anxiety, fighting back her rage. Because her own daughter was the culprit and everyone in the banquet had seen it. What would other people think of her in the future? Master Bai shook his head. "It doesn't look good. The lady is bleeding out and I think we're losing the baby." Sir Yan's face was livid. "Maybe she'll have a chance if Master Chu is here." Master Bai sighed. "But Master Chu is giving Her Majesty the Empress Dowager her routine examination today. I don't think he'll be able to come." Sir Yen and his wife might not have good enough connections to get Master Chu, but… Feng Sun. Mrs. Yen rushed to Feng Sun's side and took him by the arm. "Aunt." Feng Sun was looking for Feng Wu everywhere, and was bewildered by Mrs. Yan's sudden appearance. "Go to the royal palace and get Master Chu for me now. You're the Crown Prince's good friend. I'm sure you can do it. Please help me." Mrs. Yen was so frustrated by her imbecilic daughter. "But I'm busy looking for someone here." He hadn't seen Xiao Wu after she got knocked over. Could she have fallen victim to a trap? That girl was without cultivation, but so proud. What if someone decided to get rid of her? At that thought, Feng Sun ran up to Yen and grabbed her by the arm. "What have you done to Xiao Wu?" Yen might be fierce in appearance, but she was faint of heart. She burst into tears at Feng Sun's harsh tone right away. "I didn't mean it. Cousin, I really didn't. It was all Feng Lu's doing. She said she wanted to get rid of Feng Wu, and that's why I agreed to work with her. It was her plan. It was her plan all along." Sob. Feng Lu was shocked. Yen was blaming her for everything. If she let Yen do it, everyone would think that it was her fault. In the end, Yen would walk away while Feng Lu would be in so much trouble. Feng Lu raised her voice immediately. "Yen, that's nonsense. You came to me first, saying that you couldn't let Lady Tang have this baby, or your status would be threatened. You prompted me to bring Feng Wu here today and to push her at Lady Tang." "Shut up!" Lady Wang slapped Feng Lu hard in the face. How could she be so stupid? How could she make such accusations in public? She was going to incriminate herself together with Yen. Just then. Chapter 357, More Chaos. Chapter 357, More Chaos. Feng was walking toward them while chatting cheerfully with the others. He had picked a valuable gift for Sir Yen today, and the latter had patted him on the shoulder afterward with a knowing smile. Feng Yanfeng knew there and then that he was going to get that assistant minister position in the Ministry of Official Personnel. Feng Yanfeng was feeling ecstatic inside when he heard about what happened to Lady Tang. He then decided to come over with some friends to console Sir Yen. However, he heard Feng Lu's loud accusation before he even saw her face. Feng Yanfeng was mortified. He froze on the spot. What? Feng Lu had something to do with what had happened to Lady Tang. By then, Yen Yen had jumped to her feet and began to scream at Feng Lu. That's bullshit. You came to me first. You said you couldn't stand Feng Wu's arrogance, and you wanted to set her up and make her kill Lady Tang's baby. That way you'd be able to kill two birds with one stone. Feng Lu wasn't going to let Yen Yen pin it on her, and she jumped at Yen Yen. Smack! A slap landed on her face, so hard it made her light-headed and she saw stars. You brat! Feng Yanfeng thought his head was going to explode. It had cost him a fortune to fawn on Sir Yen, and he had practically gone down on his knees. And look what Feng Lu had done behind his back. Feng Yanfeng swore that he could kill her right there and then. Feng Yanfeng was about to say something, but Sir Yen silenced him with a wave of his hand. Mrs. Yen also stood there and stared at Yen Yen in astonishment. She knew that Yen Yen wasn't smart, but she had never expected that the latter could be this stupid. Ah! Lady Tang wailed in pain. Master Bai came out and grimaced in resignation. There's really nothing I can do now. You'll need a better doctor. It reminded Mrs. Yen of someone. Where's Feng Wu? The old lady flared up at that name. What do you want that brat for? Kick her out. I don't ever want to see her again. She's never setting foot in this manor. Mrs. Yen took a deep breath. She couldn't let Lady Tang die. If that happened, the others wouldn't blame Yen Yen, but would be convinced that the girl had done it under her mother's instructions. That would ruin Mrs. Yan's reputation forever. At that thought, Mrs. Yen was even more desperate to find Feng Wu. Miss Wu is an extremely talented doctor. I'm sure she'll be able to save Lady Tang and her baby. Mrs. Yen was there when Feng Wu had saved Mrs. Ning. However, her stubborn mother-in-law only smirked. You evil woman! I know you want Lady Tang dead. Only then can you be satisfied. Mother! That outright accusation made Mrs. Yan's face very grim. Ah, it hurts, my baby. Lady Tang kept on crying and her shrill cries made Yen Yen and Feng Lu blanch. They had never felt as despairing as they did now. Despite the old lady's angry protests, Mrs. Yen gave her order. Go find Miss Wu and bring her here ASAP. Yes. Mrs. Yen had run the household affairs for years, and all the servants were in the habit of following her orders. However, what was Feng Wu doing at the moment? She was studying the key she had stolen from Sir Yen. She had taken it for an ordinary key until she couldn't open the door. Only then did she take a closer look, and she saw that. Chapter 358 Withdraw Their Confession. Chapter 358 Withdraw Their Confession. Feng Wu realized in amazement. There was a spiritual imprint on the key, so that no one other than Sir Yen himself could use it. Feng Wu was so frustrated. After putting up with Feng Lu's lousy plan all this time, she just found out that it was all for nothing. What a waste of time! Just then, Feng Wu saw people begin to move to and fro around the lake. Since she couldn't get in, her only choice was to give up for the time being. Sigh. Feng Wu patted herself on the chest. She didn't like it at all, but she had no choice but to head back with the key. Mrs. Yen was frantically searching for Feng Wu. Mrs. Zhuo was confused and so were the other ladies. Feng Wu? She knows medicine? Mrs. Qian frowned. How can that be? Mrs. Zhao was equally bewildered. I've never heard of such a thing. Is Mrs. Yen mistaken? The other ladies gathered around and talked among themselves. Their conclusion was that Mrs. Yen had lost her mind. Someone then suggested, is it possible that Mrs. Yen doesn't want Lady Tang to have this baby? Is that why she's insisting on letting Feng Wu treat her? But that's so stupid. She has so many other options if she wants to get rid of Lady Tang. Did she have to do it in front of so many people? Mrs. Yen is too smart to make such a mistake. Mrs. Yen heard everything. Her face was livid. She cast stern looks at Yen Yen and Feng Lu. They were going to pay for this. Have you found her? Mrs. Yen glared at her steward and said between gritted teeth. Although he had no idea why Mrs. Yen was doing this, the steward still shook his head and replied, we lost track of Miss Feng Wu among the chaos. It's not that easy to find her. Just then, someone went up to Yen Yen and whispered something in her ear. It was Zhua Qingyu, Zhua Qingluan's own sister. Yen Yan's eyes lit up. She won't take advantage of the chaos and try to steal stuff, will she? Yen Yen, who had been huddled in the corner, spoke up all of a sudden, which caught everyone's attention. I mean it. Yen Yen clenched her fists, hoping more than anything else to drag Feng Wu into this. She's just come back from northern border city and her family has nothing. I bet she has her eye on a lot of things here and she's out there stealing things. The others weren't convinced. Could it be possible? Actually, it was all Feng Wu's plan. Yen Yen rose to her feet and said loudly, you all saw it. She dragged us toward Lady Tang just then. She planned everything. Feng Sun only thought Yen Yen ridiculous and rolled his eyes at her. Didn't you admit that it was Feng Lu's plan just then? Why are you blaming Feng Wu now? Haha, cousin, you're so naive. Yen Yen reacted quickly. I said so because I wanted to bring Feng Wu's guard down. She would feel safe enough to sneak off if she saw me and Feng Lu attacking each other. Feng Sun felt like slapping her. Yen Yen, you were accusing Feng Lu earlier and you're accusing Feng Wu now. Where's your evidence? Do you think everyone will take your word for it? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.